Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome to another exciting episode of Rip It Off the Card. Yes, we're talking about collectibles and collecting, and it's all very exciting stuff. It's a Wednesday night and we're back. Yay team. And as we're watching it, look, usually Ange is the first person to get his name into the screen, but tonight it's Joel. G'day Joel, and of course he's a happy Demon supporter, so well done to him. Now, it's very, very funny. When we were putting this show together, Aaron, who's sitting right there at the moment, said to me, there's so much stuff to talk about that is actually obese. And all I could think about was like fan credibility. You've got to be a fan, and obeseness sort of goes hand in hand when you sort of sit and think about it. So I'm going to pass over to the coolest dude in the entire show. And because there's only two of us, I guess that's not saying a great deal about me, is it? Mr. Aaron, how you going tonight, old son?
I'm going well. Who would have thought Wednesday night would have been the coolest, nerdiest night of the week? But there you go. I'm in my Indiana Jones jacket because of the topic today. Is it too squeaky though when I'm moving around?
You can squeak and you can creak in it, and it is all good, and it's a bit of fun. I mean, you got to get the hats on, and you got to get your. It's when you bring the whips out, then that's when I start worrying. So
that's when the show ends, Dags.
Exactly right. Here we go. Look at this. Thomas has really wrapped us. Yeah, there we go. But bloody glad for us. Oh, there we go. So. Yes, exactly right, which is awesome stuff. Now, the reason why we said that the show is obese tonight because we've got so much to talk about. It is absolute insanity. And the funniest thing we got to talk about is what happened yesterday, right? So for those who don't know, I also produce a show on Monday night, Sci-Fi Zone, right, which I should do with Claire. And Monday night, we had an issue with the audio, which we didn't know about until afterwards. Where on the replay, my audio came out softer than Claire's, and there was a bit of a problem going on, right? So what happened is I thought, well, I need to check for tonight. So I got hold of Aaron yesterday, and we decided to do a very quick test to make sure everything's okay. And this is what happened, right? And you're going to laugh when you see this, right? So this only goes for like 20 seconds. All right, so this is just an audio test, everybody, just to see how my sound is playing in comparison to Aaron. Aaron, can you please say something for me? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is an audio test. So if anyone's watching this, just do what the Stormtroopers said. Move along, move along.
So what do you think happened with that? What happened is that because we did it live, we're only on screen for 20 seconds, 4 people made comments about it, and we got 2 likes at it. How ridiculous is that?
It means we haven't set the bar very high for likes, that's for sure.
20 seconds. I mean, if you just think, okay, we're on air for 2 hours, right? So if you took the 2 likes and the 4 comments and over 20 seconds and extrapolated that out to 4 hours, we should have thousands upon thousands of likes. So there you go.
Maybe if we did just 20-second shows, they'd go down a lot easier.
Very, very cool. And I just got a special shout out to good old Glenn Beatty, who I know has had some medical issues of late, and he's on YouTube at the moment, and he's going home from rehab. So well done to you, sir. Yes, Jared, you were one of the ones who made a comment. But imagine that. That's all we did, and we got 2 likes for it. How ridiculous is that? So very, very cool. Now, I know you've got something very important you want to bring up, because even though the store is closed, you still had people come in. What's the deal?
We did. So we still do the old click and collect, and every week I'm saying we do the online sales and shipping out. But we had one of our riders come in and pick something up this week, and this is how we do the non-contact pickups. This is Joe Penn, who I don't know if here he is commenting there. He came in and picked up some Batman figures, and we gave him some Star Wars figures, and he said, these aren't the figures I'm looking for. And then we got the order right and gave him his Batman figures. So that was my entire social contact for the entire week.
Wow, that's a very, very happy broomstick. What can I say? Eh? So, yes, a very, 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 very cool. I did actually like that comment from Joe. Can't get enough of the professionalism. Then why the hell are you watching us? So there you go. And I like that from Mark. Yeah, these are not the presenters you're looking for. So, because we had to go live to do the test, we had no way around it, right? We thought we'll just do it nice, quick. Nobody's even going to notice it. But obviously, there are people out there watching the Sci-Fi Zone Facebook page, eagerly awaiting any little tidbit that comes up from time to time.
Just in case. Maybe we should do an unplanned pop-up show and just see what happens at random sometime.
So would everybody out there like that if Aaron and I decided to, pop up, as it were, when you least expect it, just to natter about stuff? How good would that be, do you reckon? So there you go. Very, very cool. Where are we? Oh, look at this. The vial is here. Yes, it's vial time. You will have to sit and wait. We've got a good vial one tonight. It's actually just some shocking stuff coming up. Very, very cool. And Carol said it came up in her notifications. Good stuff. Oh, look at that. Yes. How's that? Oh, we got fans. How good is this? Oh, goodness gracious me. All right. So now we've got, as if the show isn't long enough. We said, we wanted to make it a little bit longer because, as I used to say about long weekends, I never met a long one I didn't like. And we've actually thought, well, it's about time that we actually allowed people to contribute stuff to our show. So we decided to resurrect the old treasure in the suburbs. And what this is all about is to give you, the people out there, the opportunity to take some photographs of your collection. Now, we don't need the entire thing. We're looking for a sort of unique and special and just like eclectic elements of your collections that you're really, really proud of. And if you want to show them on the show. So it's a chance for you to sort of show off your wares to everybody else. And this was actually the idea of one of our viewers from last week and who's actually watching tonight. And that is good old Gavin Atkins from New South Wales. Now, Gavin, as I've discovered over the past few months, is a huge fan of Yoda, right? He's got Yoda on the brain, actually literally in this case, because it's on his head. And he has a bit of a Yoda collection that he wanted to sort of show off. So he sent me through some photos. And so this is the first of our hopefully ongoing segment of Treasure in the Suburbs. So he's a big Star Wars fan, and he's actually got some of the really unique items that you don't really get to see around anymore, like the Empire Strikes Back tablecloth and the napkins and all that sort of stuff. Have you seen that for a long time, dude?
No, I haven't for a while. The good thing about eBay, I guess, is some of that stuff that you can't find does turn up, but a lot of it just isn't local and you don't see it. There's some great stuff there, isn't there? This is the first time I'm seeing it, so I'm just taking in some of these rare items myself.
And importantly, they're still in the packets. Regarding Gavin's Yoda collection, he obviously very big on the pops. And apparently, if I'm correct, he's got every single Yoda-related pop vinyl, bar one. I think he said he's missing the blue one from one of the Comic-Con exclusives. But, we've done pop vinyl discussions before, and you wouldn't have thought, I certainly wouldn't have thought they would have made so many Yoda pops. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You think, they might have one, maybe two. But no, they've got stacks of them there. And some of them, you go, look great. And some of them, when you look at the close-up shots, what's the deal with this guy up here? Like, is Yoda on having a hard day at the office or something?
Well, that's actually they did a series of horror ones, and that one I think is a zombie Yoda that they did.
What's the deal? He didn't come back to life as a zombie. He faded away. So, so this is part of Gavin's collection. Still good to see it's all still packaged up and looking very, very groovy. And I thought this was quite funny. This is actually from The Force Awakens. I'm not sure what that is. It's Yoda that's had a bit of a hard day at the office. Do you recognize that at all?
The new role Yoda. I don't know. No, I'm not sure what that is. Is the figure a bootleg maybe?
Yeah. Could be too. Actually, it might be. But I'll tell you what, that's a Yoda that's been chasing too many parked cars. What do you reckon, eh? So I like this from Luke. Yeah, put that in the vial. It's meant to be the vial file, Luke. That's okay. Yes, very, very cool. And Jess has said, he did like the tablecloth. Of course, it doesn't cover much of the table because it's still in the packet. So, yes, very, very groovy. And one of his prized items, I believe, is actually a Frank Oz signed Yoda picture, which with the C of A, which is looking very, very groovy. So what do you reckon, old son? Some good stuff there, eh?
It's a pretty impressive collection, and there's room on that for Deep Roy to sign the other side.
Exactly right. So now, I will know this. Does anybody else know where Deep Roy would have been playing Yoda? What do you reckon? I'm not going to wait for it. We'll be there for hours waiting for the response.
When he's walking away in the distance.
Mm-hmm. It was clear to see that wasn't a puppet. Yeah, that's when it come, and he's you could tell that was actually a dude in a suit. But I didn't realize it was Deep Roy. So there you go.
Maybe it was like Battlestar Galactica. Maybe it was a chimp dressed up as a puppet.
Yeah, exactly right. I like this one from Christy. Yeah, Yoda Gollum. Yeah, they're probably not far from it, eh? So, yeah, it's very, very cool. Yeah, and Rod said it's absolutely a bootleg, but, so there was actually a bit of a demand for bootlegs. Maybe one day on the show we'll actually do a bit of a discussion about them. So, yeah, very, very cool. And you are right. Yes, it was the walking shots and the long shots. Shot. There was only one. Okay, so, yes, very, very, very cool. All right, hang on. And Gavin has said he's ready to offload. The tablecloth picture is up for sale. Oh, there we go. We can actually...
He's actually using our show to sell his stuff off. It wasn't about showing off the collection at all. It's like, put the link.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So if people out there are interested, contact Gavin and away you go. So instead of you've got eBay and you've got Facebook, what's the marketplace? You've got, what would we be called if we're selling stuff through here?
I don't
the right marketplace. So,
Toshi Station or something like that.
Very, very cool. And it's an infomercial. I absolutely love it. All right, let's move on. Otherwise, we'll never get stuff done. It's time for this. All right, let's go back and do it again. And we've got a special one tonight, haven't we, old son?
We have. This one's a bit different because usually we look at a few different products, but this time we're going to do some product reviews of something that, being in lockdown, we haven't been able to have for 2 years, and that's the Royal Melbourne Show. So we're going to have a look at some of the show bags that we think are good. I asked Dags earlier what was his favourite thing about the show, and he said it was about when the men got their choppers out and played with wood. But I always loved the show bags. So we're doing a review on show bags today, and these are some of the cool ones that are available and you might not have known were for sale.
Hey, don't go dissing the dudes who go chopping wood. Where did you get that from? It's all about the log, is that right? So, yes. Speaking of logs and flogs, wait, I thought this show was for Aaron the Flogster. Oh, my goodness.
Quiet. Like, you've seen through the concept of the show.
No. Actually, when we were discussing the show before we went to air, we were talking about the Hall of Heroes, which no doubt will come up in the discussion. But anyway, first things first.
So, yeah, the Royal Melbourne Show, I think everyone locally in Australia would know, they'd have their own show. There was the Bendigo Show and there's the Ekka and different ones around Australia. But most of them, as a kid, you could go and see the animals, you could go and see the art. But let's face it, we were all being dragged around. So at the end of the day, we could go and get all our show bags full of goodies and sugar hits. We've looked at past show bag sales on eBay a few times and we've seen that they can go for quite a bit. And we've done shows on what's a good investment. So we thought we would cast an eye over some of the stuff that's available this year and maybe point people in the right direction, or maybe you didn't even know some of this was around. So right off the bat, we have to go with the Birdie Beetle show bag. Now, I think Birdie Beetle is a long-time favourite, especially for kids, because it was the pocket money show bag. I think it was the cheapest one every single year. And so when you had your $10 from your mum, what Dags was talking about, you could go to the show and you'd load up and there'd be the loose change left and you'd go and buy the Birdie Beetle show bag. And this year is no different. You can get your Birdie Beetle show bag and it's still the cheapest show bag. I think that one starts at $4. Which you can't get much for $4 these days. But they've also done the retro one in the paper bag at the top corner there. And it comes with a limited edition tin of Birdie Beetles, which says, "Hands off my Birdie Beetle." And, you know, if you go around to Dag's house, that's what I'm always saying to him there. Get your hands off my Birdie Beetle, mate.
I tell you what, that's one booty you really do want to put your hands on. I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying it. It's kind of funny, isn't it? So you got the Birdie Beetle show bag, but throughout the rest of the year, no one gives a rat's ass about Birdie Beetles.
It is one of those things, isn't it, where it's just it's one of those collective memories from going to the show, getting the Birdie Beetle show bag and getting your 6 Birdie Beetles.
Actually, the Vile is on the ball here because he said it's Greg King's favorite show bag because it's so cheap. I love it. Absolutely. Hang on. What? Anyway, let's move on, shall we?
Okay, we promise that's the only confectionery show bag we're looking at. Interestingly enough, we've looked at Star Wars show bags and what a good investment they can be. Up the top there, we've got one of the 80s show bags, which came out that had various erasers and posters and stickers and stationery and that kind of thing. And Star Wars has been a staple at the show for as long as I can remember. I mean, there was the wilderness years when Star Wars wasn't around, but every year they wheel out the Star Wars show bag. Now, what is amazing this year you can actually get an Empire Strikes Back show bag, which I don't think I've ever seen. And they never released an Empire Strikes back in 81, because I went to the show looking for one and got a silver cap with Empire, but not the show bag. So this year, there is a Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back show bag. And it's got some cool stuff in. I think the coolest thing in it is a Empire Strikes Back beach towel. And then it's got the regular stuff, the bags and the mugs, the caps, the posters, the socks, the water bottles, and all that kind of stuff. So if you're into retro Star Wars and you're looking for something that's local in Australia and might not be available overseas, the Empire Strikes Back show bag is a pretty good one. And the other thing about that, they don't do an Empire one every year, so that's a bit of an unusual thing. The other two that are out this year, did you want to say something, Dags?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily agree, because it's a modern day product, right? And it's, to me, it's like it needed to come out at the time when the movie came out. To do it now, it's sort of like the Empire's long since bolted from Hoth, and you, maybe 20 years from now, we'll say, look at that show bag today and go, that's grouse, that's worth a bit of money or whatever else. But it's still like, it's a cash in. It's not because, yes. And admittedly, it was for last year when the movie turned 40 years old, but. I don't know. It's a modern day product. It looks cool, but I think it won't have anywhere near the same amount of collecting.
Well, I think everyone here would have heard the colloquialism where you call someone a show bag if they're a liar because they're full of shit. Now, most show bags are full of crap, and I'm not really saying these are amazing things to grab because they're loaded full of the best stuff. I'm more thinking like you're thinking. In 20 years' time, people are going to go, wow, there was an Empire Strikes Back show bag then. It was only available in a limited time just through one company for a couple of weeks, and that's going to be a rarer item. But saying that, when you talk about the current stuff, there is another, as Yoda would say.
Very, very cool.
On the very same slide there, this year there is the Child show bag and the Mandalorian show bag. Now, I didn't know these were about. So I've ordered them because the Mandalorian is really topical, and that's going to be one of those things that people who have to have every single Mandalorian item globally are not going to get the Australian show bag. So I think that's going to be a good item to pick up locally. The Child doesn't grab me as much as the Mandalorian. It's all green, and pretty much they've used the one same image on everything, which is the total cheapness that goes along with show bags. But still, if you're into Star Wars, I do think that's very of the time, and Mandalorian will be around for a couple of years and disappear, and that will be almost a little time capsule of what's going on at the moment. So I think those are both really good show bags to grab.
I'm surprised they actually called it the Child and not Grogu. I think they can't call it Baby Yoda, so they're like thinking, well, what do you do? And they're probably thinking the word "the child" has a better appeal to kids or whatever else than the name Grogu, even though that's actually the character's name. So
yes,
yeah, it would be like saying, oh, we're got a Yoda show bag, but we're going to call it Little Green Dude or something. So yeah, anyway.
the Minch show bag.
Love it.
And the Mandalorian's so popular, there's obviously two companies that have licensed a show bag. So there's two totally different show bags. I think this one is the better one because it's crapper. This one has like the really generic stuff that they've slapped the Mandalorian on. So it's got one of those disc spinners that you can whiz it out and it goes up like a helicopter and things like that. Totally nothing to do with the Mandalorian, and they've just slapped the Mandalorian on it. This goes back to when you looked at 20, 30 years ago and they'd put Doctor Who Invisible Ink in the $1 Doctor Who show bag, and it now goes for about $500 because no bugger kept it for all that time. This is the kind of official merchandise, because it's licensed, that comes out locally, is around for a couple of weeks. 90% of it's opened and thrown away or destroyed within a week of the show bag coming out, and then they're impossible to find. So it's one of those things, if you like to collect stuff that's so bad it's good, that's the show bag for you. And then, of course, there's the show bag, just the regular Star Wars show bag that gets trotted out every year at the top there. And if you're interested in any of the bags that we're showing today, down the side of the screen there's the showbagworld.com and a show bag company and a couple of links. You can go back later if you are interested. The bags are about $30 each, which is more than pocket money these days. They say there's about $80 worth of value if you bought them separately. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a bit of a fib there, Dags?
Yeah, well, actually, it's very funny because I went to the show about 3 or 4 years ago. I took my other half along, and I did see the Star Wars one. And even though I was actually, hang on, I'll start again. We saw the Star Wars one, and I was actually quite impressed with all the color and the way the products were produced. And I thought, you know what, the products actually, as you mentioned earlier about cheap and nasty stuff, they did actually look quite good. And I thought, you know what, there's actually some stuff that you go, you know what, I'd be okay buying that. So yeah, I think it's important that if you are going to get products from a show bag, you do actually at least want them to be some good things in there, or stuff that's only exclusive to the bag. Now, getting back to the point earlier about the Empire one, if they produce merchandise that's only in the bag and you cannot get it anywhere else, then yes, absolutely, the value will skyrocket. But if it's just stuff that you can buy anywhere and they've just chucked it in, it'll be worth nothing. But having said that, the Star Wars one did actually look quite good. So yeah.
I think the art they've used for Empire is unique art, so I think it will only be in the bag, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, totally agree with you on that.
It's very funny. We're talking about show bags. In 1978, it may have been 77, 78. I was in primary school, and I remember a little kid, because I was 9 years, 10 years old at this point, and a kid turned up with a Star Wars show bag that he got from somewhere, and I'd never seen that bag before. And I thought, oh, where'd you get that from, you little bastard? He was, obviously younger than I was. I have to beach up and take it. But that bag, if it still existed today, would be worth a lot of money, because I think that was actually quite exclusive. So very cool.
Here's some of the other ones that I thought I'd highlight, just because they're the kind of cult shows or movies that everyone loves and has a bit of a following. First, you've got Rick and Morty. I think when we were looking at what's a good investment in the future, we highlighted Rick and Morty because it's kind of got that cross-age appeal that people like, where it entertains adults and it entertains kids. There's not a lot of Rick and Morty merchandise everywhere, and it does have an assortment of stuff with Rick and Morty. They're the type of bags you could probably get, put away, and there wouldn't be a lot of it around down the track. Mind you, you've probably got to wait about 20 years before the people who grew up with it to start collecting. The other end of that is there's a Back to the Future show bag this year. So there wasn't one when Back to the Future came out, and it's got so beloved and so popular with its fans that now bring out a Back to the Future show bag. So that's one of those that I wouldn't have thought would be at the show, but there you go. There's the Back to the Future show bag.
Two questions that have come through, and I've just lost where it was. Was there, I can't remember where it was written down. I'll have to find it. Oh, yeah, from Joe. Was there an Indiana Jones show bag? I don't think there was.
I don't ever remember there being an Indiana Jones show bag. I'm pretty sure there wasn't. And that was right in the age when I was going to the show looking for that. I do remember there not being an Empire Strikes Back bag, which I was pretty disappointed about. And I don't ever remember there being an Indy one. There might be modern ones.
I'm going to cut you off because I need to keep moving on. And Joe's also asked, is there a database for show bags and their contents? I would argue probably, and it's kind of ironic because if anybody watching the Channel 9 News last week, there was actually a show bag collector who at that did a bit of a special on him, and he had all these collecting show bags from the not the contents, just the bags, the physical bags themselves, going back like 70 years. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually. It'd be very exclusive, and there probably would be
I can answer that there isn't. There are databases on what bags there were, but because they changed the content state to state, people who were collecting at the time don't even know the content of show bags Australia-wide. So there's still argument on some of the show bags as to what was actually in them at the time. And the other thing, because they were cheap and nasty, they might have run out of a product midway through and just put something else to replace it in. So you got that kind of variance as well.
All right, cool. So Rod's confirmed, yes, there was an Indy show bag in 89. That's probably for Last Crusade. So very, very cool. All right, we move on.
Okay, and then the one there I thought is interesting is the AC/DC show bag, because that's one of those bands, and bands, unless you Kiss, don't really get a show bag, but AC/DC being Australian and still having a massive following, got a show bag, and I would argue that would be worth a lot internationally because they're a big band internationally. There isn't a lot of merchandise, not official stuff, and that would be one I think people overseas wouldn't even know about, and then it would turn up, and the first couple on eBay might go for quite a bit. The other end of the popularity, and I'm not saying this because I don't like Star Trek, it's just what's in it. The Star Trek show bag seems pretty lame to me. They've got like just a generic yellow bag with the Star Trek logo, and then some very generic pictures of like someone doing the Vulcan salute and socks and a couple of things like that. So I'd be pretty disappointed if I was a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, socks. Yeah, that's a bit of a funny one. Greg has mentioned he's searched show bag world for Doctor Who, and there's never been anything. So maybe someone...
There's been a modern Doctor Who show bag for a couple of years, but the state of the show at the moment, it isn't popular enough for them to produce a show bag. I think the last one came out the last year, Matt Smith, or the first year, David Tennant was the Doctor. And they were around, and it was the same kind of generic stuff, but they were okay. But there hasn't been one for a couple of years, not through the whole Jodie Whittaker era, I don't think.
So here's a funny comment, right? So Carol's excited about so many show bags, love the child bag. See, that statement by itself could be interpreted in a million different ways. But if they had said it was called Grogu, love the Grogu bag, everybody would know what you're talking about. So once again, you're just using the term the child is just way too generic. And if you said to someone, oh, I went and bought the child show bag, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. So having said that, you say Grogu, they still won't know. But anyway, not to worry.
And here's the difference in show bags. There's one. These are available now. There's one on eBay, a Pokemon one from, I think it's 1999, and it's over $1,000. And there's the one you can buy at the moment at the show. There's two different version ones, or they would be at the show, but they're from the show bag companies. And so if you want something that's going to get popular in the future, possibly buy a couple of the Pokemon show bags. There was another one I found in the top corner there that was just sold on Gumtree, but that only went for $35. So Pokemon, always popular.
Actually, Carol, you don't need to apologize. I was more critical about the fact the bag was called the child, not Grogu, right? So yeah, so what you said was correct, because it is actually the child show bag. So I don't know, that's what I was just sort of discussing. So no need to apologise. So there you go. And good old Mark is always weird to stir the pot. Where's the Jodie Whittaker show bag? Yeah, good on you, dude. So there you go. And probably, if anything, it'll probably come out after she's left the show. So very, very cool. And look at that. Spot yourself on those pictures, kids.
Yeah, that's the end of our quick look on show bags this year. But down the bottom middle there, you can see the Hall of Heroes during the 80s with some kids checking out their show bags. And it's a little bit hard to see in the picture, but one of the kids is holding a Bubble Yum show bag and a horror show bag. And I myself bought both of those at the show. And again, I was saying to Dags earlier, you can see a family in that colour picture on the platform at the station. And the number of times I did that with my parents, where we'd go around the show and we'd catch the train home and we'd collapse on the platform of the station and go through the show bags. And my mum and dad would be going, don't get everything out. We've got to get on the train, save it till home. But of course, when you've been around the show behaving the whole day, you don't want to have these bags full of goodies that you've got to like do the hour trip home without opening. So there's our little nostalgic look at the show. And hopefully if you are into those kind of things, it's a bit of a guide to what's available this year from the online show bag sales.
Okay, hang on. I've just got to, sorry. The hard drive's fallen asleep. I love this one, right? From, where are we? The Vial. He wants a Babu Freak show bag, Daddy. There's no, imagine that if nobody knows what Grogu is, they're going to have no idea what a Babu Freak is. I'm sure people watching this going, what the hell's a Babu freaking Freak? Unbelievable. And there's also a comment here. Sorry, Thomas said he went to the show a few years ago and it's disappointed around. Oh, yeah, it's a completely different animal now. It's nothing like what we remember. But, you know, in 30, 40 years' time, today is what kids will remember. So, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it was a different world back then. Very, very cool. And there's a huge discussion here about fandom comics. I mean, I'm not putting it on the screen, but all these people are just talking about fandom comics and show bags and collections and whatever else. So,
yeah, they used to put Phantom comics in a lot of show bags because the people who made Phantom would give them to the show for free, because they'd figure if every kid had a Phantom comic, then they might pick up some fans. So it was a marketing thing.
There you go. And you are right, Thomas. Yes, there were some very, very good memories that came from the Royal Melbourne show. Everybody sort of got them. And but yeah, as I said earlier, Hall of Heroes, you had to go in there and he just, you're just on stalks. It was like, oh my God, what have they got for this year? Because back then, obviously, we didn't get like on the news or on the internet, this is what's coming out until you actually physically went there. You go, oh, check this out. How good is that? So even though half the stuff that was in those bags you wouldn't give a rat's ass about normally, but there you go. Very, very cool. Speaking of things that we don't give a rat's ass about, it's time for this.
Greg King's
cheaper things. Yeah, mate.
You know what it is? It's the segment so cheap it doesn't even have its own theme music.
No. That's us. Greg King's cheap. I think we need to hire the Wiggles for this. What do you reckon? A bit of hot potato. Oh, Greg's a happy dude. There we go. Yes, he's got his segment. All right, so what are we gasbagging about tonight? Look at this. It's Moneybag Sullivan making an appearance on the show.
Yeah, this week we got mail. It's another one of those things where I'm following up what one of our viewers suggested. Something for the Rip It Off the Card segment. So it's for the Greg King's Cheaper Things. And what we do in this segment, we find those things that come up on our Facebook feed that just seem too good or too cheap to be true. And I buy them just to see what turns up. In theory, because nothing's turned up yet.
I've got to cross. I can't help myself. I've got to cross a line here. Moneybag Sullivan went out with one of our viewers here, who was Jess once upon a time. I'll say, Jess, that's one hell of a hickey you've given him. Oh, bad dags. But that was just too good to pass up. So there you go. Very good. All right, what do we got?
So this week, what I have bought is the Jumanji replica board game. And boy, it looks nice. This is a exact replica of the one that's in the movie. So it's not like the Parker Brothers Jumanji board game that you could get from the shops and sort of as a card game. This full on has the carved board that opens up. It has hand carved and painted pieces. It looks amazingly nice. It even has a working screen in the center, which apparently is run by some pretty good tech. So it plays the jungle drums. It comes up with the different things that light up, and it says in the middle of the game from the movie. And it was $199, reduced to $49. So of course, me and Greg could not resist ordering this. You can see there what I was saying. It's the wooden or faux wood, I guess. It might be a resin style board that opens up like the one in the movie. The picture isn't too huge, but you can see there is a working screen in the middle that is supposedly will replicate what was said in the movie and come up with different things. You can play the game. There were videos in the ad that I didn't show, but it does the thing where you throw the pieces down and by magnetism they stand up by themselves and the board moves around by itself. This is got to be one of the best $49 I've ever spent, I've got to say.
Love this comment from Mark. High quality card from the finest Chinese plastic. Oh, that is awesome. Oh, very, very cool. Anyway, so yes.
So yep, I put it into the basket, and then when I went through the checkout, even though it was meant to be free postage, they charged me postage. This seems to be one of those things that is happening every week where, you know, they're telling you it's free postage and then they whack you with postage. And again, when I went through the checkout and paid for it, the payment seemed to not correspond at all with what I was paying for. But you know what? I'm doing it for this segment, so we'll see if anything good rolls up. So far, I think we're 6 weeks or 5 weeks in and nothing so far.
I like this comment from Gavin. Yeah, it is the ultimate game of risk. There's no denying that. So, so there's a bit of outlay, but there's not a lot of return on investment at the moment. Yes, so there you go.
This segment is the ultimate game of risk. Just for a update on what we've got coming. Yeah. We've got the Transformer mystery box, the Commander Cody replica clone helmet, the set of leather-bound replica prop books, the horror mystery box, which is supposed to have $129 worth of value in minimum, and now the Jumanji board game. And then we've got the dates there that we've ordered them. We've got what we paid for them in Australian dollars. And as you can see so far, we have had no arrivals. So Greg King cannot give them a thumbs up or thumbs down yet.
I agree with Joe. They'll probably all arrive on the same day, you know, being delivered to you, click and connect like with the broomstick, you know, from the guy outside. He just hands in a broomstick and there's
that is likely. I ordered them a week apart so we can do a regular segment on the show, and then all like 10 of them turn up on the same day. I don't know what we do then.
I'll tell you what, it'll be a damn long show when that occurs because, yes, it's if you're going to be opening them up on screen. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we'll cross those bridges when the time comes. So, yes, very, very cool. You know, what happens, I'll stand outside your shop when you get there, these things getting delivered, and I'll say to the driver, just don't deliver it because the show's long enough as it is. I can't have it going any longer.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we're trying to make this interesting. It's damn Australia Post and the global pandemic that's letting us down.
Yeah. Very, very good. I like this from Greg. Is there tracking on any of the items? Of course, there's no tracking. Who wants tracking? You got to trust the system.
I've had an alert on about 3 of them saying your item has been shipped. So some of them followed me up with that. So on those things, we might get something. Who knows? It's total mystery. Greg and I are just waiting for these things.
I like that. Yeah, tracking pigeon. I love it. Okay, but I'll tell you what's not a mystery. And what's not a mystery is probably one of the most popular segments of this entire show. Yes, he's watching tonight. He's got his babu frick and the guts and he's ready to rock and roll. It's time for the Vile File.
Oh, goodness. The Vile File. It's the segment that's getting its own life, really, isn't it? And taking over everywhere. I guess that must be all the midi-chlorites that he's spreading throughout the show.
Somebody out there, because I'm not going to do it, and Aaron's not going to do it, needs to set up an Instagram page for the Vile File and see if it gets its own life. What do you reckon, eh?
Yes, I think it could happen. This week, the Vile is still at Disneyland, so he's been really doing a working holiday in Disneyland because the last couple of weeks he sent us some gold, and by the looks of the postcard this week, he's visiting Toy Story. So here we go. The pictures we've got from Toy Story here are interesting because these are all actual toys. It's interesting because there was a design change in the head of Woody. You can see down the bottom the original head, and then they changed it to a smiling head. And the eyes move in this head and everything, so you can actually roll them back into his head and give him white eyes. And the Vile has found someone who's taken this like cloudy-eyed version of Woody and made some horror poses. So, oh my goodness, if you were a kid and you got this Woody toy, it'd be almost like getting the clown from the Poltergeist, I think. So across the top there, we can see Woody has a knife and is coming at you. Woody is just like laying back looking at you, and I think that might be the creepiest one of all. And then there's that song, Woody's got a gun. Oh, sorry, I won't try singing anymore. No, and then the very last one there, I don't know if you can see it. He's it looks like he's got a camera and doing something at his crotch. So Woody's got some texts to send you. Don't answer because it's not the Woody you want to see that you're going to be opening to.
Anne just said, I like that. It looks like Woody's been into the special cookies. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the Mark with the Buzz Lightyear's pulled an all-nighter. It looks like that. I like the one at the top. You can almost put your own thought bubble into this one, eh? It's like, yeah, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Well, the ones down the bottom, they're real products. Two of them are knockoffs and one of them isn't. So you've got the Buzz Lightyear there, which is from an alternate universe toy special, and rather than Toy Story. And for some reason, he's got one eye raised really suspiciously, looking at Barbie. And the Barbie product, I don't know who was in charge of this. The Barbie is the Barbie Loves Woody doll.
Well, that's right. I mean, you can't knock a good Woody. What can I say?
Well, there's the good Woody, like on the end there. That's another bootleg, so it's not an official one, but he's looking pretty chill, and I think Barbie's about to get some splinters.
Hang on, it all depends on how you say it. If you just say Barbie loves Woody, we could say Barbie loves Woody. Oh, that's just so wrong on a lot of levels. But yes, I mean, they should have named the character something else because it's just not right, is it? But anyway, we move on.
So this one confused me because right in the middle of his visit to Disneyland, the Vile is sending us a product called Crazy Foam. Now, I don't know if we have it in Australia. I don't remember having it here. It's basically like a bath foam where you have all these different characters. You can see there's the Justice League and Marvel and DC comics. There's some Halloween ones, My Little Pony, is that Paw Patrol? And it's like shaving cream. You push the cap and out of the mouth it sprays like a crazy foam. I think in the movie Home Alone 2 you see Kevin spraying it on the ground and all the two villains like slip and slide all over it. So I was figuring because we're in the middle of pandemic, the Vile must be giving us a health warning, how to keep clean and hygienic. So this is the health warning from the Vile. Well, let's move on to the next slide, Dags.
There we go. Look at that.
Oh dear. So there you go. Much like if anyone uses shaving gel or shaving foam, if you don't wipe it off after, a little bit of residue comes out and then sort of will puff up. And you can see that context is everything because we've seen that Woody sip a cup before. But when the Vial has arranged it with superheroes and Wonder Woman, Batman like that, it really is not the type of thing that that kids should be watching. So sorry, children, that's all the Vial's fault, not mine and Dag's at all.
Don't point the finger at me. I didn't compile these pictures. I just realized what you just did. Oh my God. It's so wrong, isn't it? I mean, really, I mean, you even look at the Superman one up there on the top right corner, and you go, oh, there's a lot of really, really unsavory things we could say.
Well, if you look at the one which is just the demonstration of Batman, where you spray the foam and wash it out and use your hands, even that, like, who thought? It's like whoever put the Pez in the Seven Dwarfs the last week. Whoever thought that was going to be a good design? Not like any of them. I think it's only the superheroes where it sprays out of their mouths. Luckily, on some of the other stuff, it comes out of different places. But yeah, it's one of those things you do wonder who made this. If they did in their back of their mind go, ha, 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 like this is going to look like this, or if it really was totally innocent.
Totally agree. And I agree with you, Joel. It is actually so wrong. I mean, they may have had the best intentions, but they really didn't think this thing through. So, yeah. All right, let's move on to something a bit more kiddie friendly, shall we?
Yes. So, like, after we saw that, we thought, oh, look, we really need to change the tone because this whole thing is becoming a bit too much Benny Hill. So we asked the Vial who his favourite...
Hang on. Got to cut you off. Very important. Poor old Thomas, we need to send someone over to his house. He's lost his wine, his cheesels, and his marbles.
You have to lose your marbles to watch the show.
I like that one. Good old Donald Luck is an innocent. Oh, there you go. Cop that. Anyway, keep going.
So the Vial chose Donald Duck because he says out of all the Disney characters, Donald Duck would be the most likely to be his apprentice because he gives in to his hate and anger sometimes and he's on a short fuse. But when you're at Disneyland and you're going around and seeing Donald Duck, that's not very likely to happen. So we asked the Vial if maybe he could find a special Donald Duck ride or something like that that could highlight his trip to Disneyland.
This is bad.
So he came back with this. This is a Donald Duck children's ride. And I don't know, again, who designed this. It's one of those where you sit in Donald's lap and it sort of just rocks gently backwards and forwards when you put coins in. But the one you can see at the top there where there isn't someone riding it, they've even got Donald's tongue hanging out. Which is just that little extra detail that makes it even wronger than it should be. And you can see this isn't a one-off ride because there's people in different locations who have taken pictures of this, obviously because they think it's funny or because it's inappropriate. But Donald is having a much better time than he should be for a kid's ride. We don't know why that tongue is out.
What do you say about this? I mean, there's even like a child riding this damn thing. So the parent said, oh, yeah, you can sit on top of Donald and, oh, it's just so wrong. It was like, who would do that? I mean, that's just crazy.
Well, the thing about that, obviously, the adults that are riding that know what it looks like and are posing for the picture because it's going to look suggestive and bad. But it wasn't designed for that. It was designed for innocent young kids to hop on down Donald's lap and go for a ride. And the Vial has managed to now take that innocent image and corrupt it in our minds.
Oh my goodness gracious me! And that's it. Yeah, it's no. Look, be frankly honest, the picture down here, right? I thought I couldn't see that properly, and I blew it up, made it larger, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to put it on the show because it does look a tad inappropriate because she's looking down at his head and the tongue and all the rest of it, and she's looking pretty happy. And I thought, you know what? That is just And I agree with you, Joe. Yeah, we could head into some very dark territory with this, but that is just stuff like that.
We just point out this segment seems to be the most popular out of all the subjects we do, with lots of people suggesting different things. All the products we use, we haven't doctored. They are real products that are out there and real photos that are in real locations. So we just put them all together and the Vial wraps them up in a nice little segment and we just share them with you for your consideration, much like Rod Serling on The Twilight Zone. So here we go. That was the end of the Vial's visit to Disneyland this week. He's also sent a few nice little extra photos. The one I thought was interesting, we saw the Batman gun the other week. Well, apparently Batman wasn't the only one that had an inappropriate water pistol. Donald got the same treatment as well. And like the Batman one, the plug to fill him up with water is in the butt. So I don't know like why this was deemed appropriate at some stage. But then we've got some old vintage Disney toys and some inappropriate Toy Story toys, and then we've got like Donald Duck creeping up and replacing Babu Frick. So I would say, Dags, what do you think? This week those items have been well and truly violated.
Totally agree. That is absolutely unbelievable. Who would create a duck you can ride on that is, yes, face up to it? That is just not wrong. Yeah, exactly right.
The same people who would make a Pikachu jumping castle where you enter first through his front bottom and then back through his back bottom. I mean, some people don't think.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, so we've violated the episode or that particular segment for this evening. Hope, yes, exactly right. This gets worse and better every week. No, and as Aaron said, we're just finding these items. People out there are producing them. It's got nothing to do with us. Anyway, let's move on to something a little bit more enjoyable, shall we? Ooh, baby, do you know that's what... All right, it's the classic eBay segment. So what are we talking about tonight, old son?
Well, because our main segment is Indiana Jones, tonight's segment is Indiana Jones items. So we're going to look at some of the recent raiders of the internet with some interesting eBay stuff. This one made me laugh. I did not realize the Fate of Atlantis was an 11-disc game. I had a Commodore Amiga, and they used to have 1 or 2 discs. I don't remember having Fate of Atlantis, but can you imagine back then that the storage was so poor per disc that you needed 11 discs to run this game? And can you imagine if you got halfway through this game and put a disc in and that disc didn't work, and then trying to replace it, and it might take you a year to get halfway through the game to get to that point. So this is a tested and working original Fate of Atlantis with all discs there. How much would that go for?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because when I was at work back in the mid-90s, I had to load MS Office on a computer, 30 discs, and disc 27 was corrupted. That wasn't good at all, but we got around the problem in the end. Anyway, so what does everybody think that this actually sold for? So give us some prices. No cheating, no Googling. Just either you know it or you don't. We just take some guesses. All right, let's see how we go. The old floppy disk, eh? How good is that? All right, so Jared has said 200. Moneybag Sullivan has said 5. Joel said 700. Bloody hell. Look, Jess has already gone straight to Joel. What's it worth? You good on you. $30 for Rod. Jess is at 650. Ian just said 120 and 2 cents. Gavin's at 75. Mark's at 150. Thomas at 445. A lot of money for floppy disks. Rob has said 65. Luke is at $1,100. Bloody hell. You can buy a lot of floppy disks for that. Christy has said 15. Carol said 150. Violating Indiana Jones is at $36 is the vial. Sorry, 99 for Joshua. Mick, good to see Mick joining the show, is at 140. William has said 70. And Sarah, she's popped up out of absolutely nowhere, has said 72, which is cool. And Mr. Phil has said 75. Jimmy, good to see Jimmy joining the show, is at 350. So we're getting some last minute bids coming through, which is very, very cool. But yeah, you do wonder these days, most people wouldn't even know what a floppy disk is, let alone have the computer to run this stuff. So yeah, it's very, very cool. We've got a new face to the crowd. Connie, good to see Connie joining the show at $380. And you are right, Grant, it does belong in a museum. All right, so what do you reckon this went for? Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, boxed Amiga game, tested working past, all that sort of stuff. Very cool. It went for a whopping $145. How about that?
Which probably wasn't too much more than when it originally came out, because a game like that usually cost about $100 or $119. I remember when that came out, it was one of those multi-platform. There was the comic and there was the book, and there was a lot of rumors that might be the next Indiana Jones movie, the Fate of Atlantis, and they could have made a worse one than that, and they actually did. So what's the next item, Dags?
All right, I haven't told you who won it yet. So they're going to have to split the discs in half. So Mick said 140 and Carol said 150. So, and it's because it's 145. Yes, you can have half the discs each, and best of luck loading them up, which is very, very cool. Oh, hang on. 10. Oh, look at this. Oh, yeah, like worthless. $10 from a vendor in the street. Very, very cool. Well done, Mr. Rod. All right, next item. Look at this. Videotapes. Oh, yeah.
So this is pretty amazing. This is a beta video, so it's already rarer than VHS from the day it was released, and you can see the original release sell-through price on that was $49 when it was an original release back in about 1983. I think Raiders came out on sell-through, maybe 84 even. That's a rare one. I didn't have Raiders on beta, and we had a beta machine before we had a VHS. Raiders was actually one of the first videos we ever rented when we got our video recorder. So we've seen on here in past episodes that sometimes VHS and beta tapes can go for a fortune. Sometimes they don't go for very much at all. What do we think this one's going to go for?
Yeah, typically these days the word beta means it's in testing phase. So this is obviously the version that was released before they released the VHS version. Now, Glenn said 180, but I don't know if he was referring to this item, the previous item. So I'll go with this item for now until he pops his nose up again. Marcus said 500 round figures. Christy is $1. Oh, Christy, you kill me. You're obviously a VHS fan. Gavin's at 43. Sarah's at 50 cents. Oh, that's insulting. Where are we? Joel said 270. There's a contrast between the two bids. Daniel said 50. Jess is at 86. Ange is at 2. Rod is at 99. Phyllis said 200. Josh is at 99 as well. Ange is $2.20. Jared's at 188. Greg King, $2 for sure. Always pretty confident about this. $90 for Carol. Mick has said 80. Lucas said 40. Okay, $50. Rob has also said $50. Got the old 49.95. Grant, good to see Grant joining the show, is at $65. William's at 100. Connie is at 115. Jimmy is at 150. Thomas is at 180. And George, good to see George joining the show, is at 50. So very, very cool. See, the original retail, I see $49.95 because the price is on the box. So I didn't even notice that. Oh, well done. There you go. And, and the violating this videotape, $75 is of the vial. So very, very cool. All right. So what do we reckon this went for? Beta videotape from 1981. Video collectors you think would go completely nuts over this. It went for a whopping, hold on to your fedora hats, $8.
I would have bought that for $8. I think that was a really good buy because beta tapes have become really, really popular. They're hard to find. I think that one just went under the radar. But that said, maybe they're just not worth anything. So what was the closest? Was it 15 or was it one of the $2 ones?
Ange said 220. That puts him up on above everybody else. Hang on, Ange has got two answers here, $2 and $2.20. So I'm going to go with $2.20. I don't think any. Oh, hang on. George said 15. So I'll give it to George. He's just joined the show. So there you go, George. You're the proud owner of a beta videotape EA team that you'll never ever get to watch. So very, very, very cool. And yeah, I agree with you, Rod. That's just it hurts, doesn't it? I'm feeling pain right now. So there you go. Was it? If you want to be a good archaeologist, you've got to get out the video over here. Very, very cool. All right. So let's move on, shall we? Number 3. Oh, here we go. Now, I was going to buy this myself, but then I realized I just didn't have the heart for it.
Kalimar. But yeah, this is a sideshow. This is actually one of my favorite statues related to the Indiana Jones movies. This is Mola Ram holding a bloody heart. It's the exclusive edition that always also comes with the sacrificial chalice, which is the dead head, where they pour the sleep of the dead juice out when they convert someone over. This is a statue. It's quite tall. It's premium format, so it's quarter scale. So quite an impressive piece. So these weren't cheap when they came out, and they're even harder to get now. This is an impressive piece. How much will it go for?
I know somebody who'll be crying over the last one. Just said Carol Sizzler has all these boxed video beta tapes in their house. Now that the previous one sold for virtually nothing, that will be pretty heartbreaking for sure. All right, so a bit of Mola Ram action. Yay, team. All right.
41 bids on this as well.
Yeah, so people went completely nuts. So they really put their heart and soul into it. Oh, there you go. All right. So $790 for Joel, $1,300 for Jared, $80 for Thomas. Grant is at $1,750. Carol's at $200. Moneybag Sullivan is at $750. Rod's at $1,400. Mark's at $1,500. Bit of money in this one, isn't there? $185 for Christy. Ange is at $420. Williams at $2,500. Lucas at $950. Connie's at $1,350. Gavin's at $267. Mick is at 220. Rob's at 2,000. Joshua's at 300. Good old cheese. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Cheese Noodles back again. And wow, saw you earlier. Missed the cheese. Good to see you here back on the show. 3,200. Phil's at 200. Sorry, Phil's at 200. Jess is at 818. Okay. It's Moldy Rum does a heart catch on fire. Yeah, okay. Violating Molar Ram. Yeah, he had it coming too. Is at 1935. George is at 230. Jimmy's at 1,000. And Mika said he's put an extra $1 at $1,220. So there you go. But yes, 41 bids. There's obviously a bit of interest in this, which is very, very cool. All right, Sideshow Collectables. Indiana Jones, Molar Ram's got the heart and everything now. Very, very cool. And actually, you need to give this to your other half, your girlfriend or whatever. And you can say, see, honey, I think of you when I give you this because you've got my heart. Oh, how sweet is that? How much did it go for? 885. There you go.
Now, I actually think that was a bargain. I reckon that's a $1,500 statue all the way. And because it's in Australia, usually you only find these overseas. So you're usually paying a couple of $100s to get them in. So that was a good price for that, even though $800 is a lot to spend on a collectible. So that was one I would have got for the shop.
It's a top. Hang on, I think Luke has it at 950. Gets a bit of change back. Everybody else is way under or way over. But Luke, who probably he's too young to have a bank account, yeah, I reckon he might have this. So there you go. So be still my beating heart. Very, very cool. How good is that? Oh, hang on, Jess got it apparently. Oh, well, there you go, Jess. Yeah, I don't know what Jess put in. I can't remember now.
There was a 790 right at the start, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. If that's the case. Oh, yeah. Joel got it at 790. So that's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So they can split up between themselves. So yeah, it's very, very cool. Well done, everyone. Very, very cool. Oh, yeah. Jess was 818. Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Anyway, we move on. Like the Indiana Jones movies themselves, we've got to move on. And the next one is, oh my God, look at that. Mate, go up the Khyber Pass with this.
Now, I don't really know if you remember these, Dags. There used to be a shop called King of Knives, and there was one in sort of every major shopping centre, and they would be selling kitchen knives and stuff, but they branched out into swords and prop knives, and you could go there and get the Indiana Jones Bowie knife and Lord of the Rings replicas, and then they changed the laws, and all the shops disappeared overnight. And I remember going into Knox where they had one and seeing this knife for weeks and weeks and weeks and not being able to afford it and not being able to, of course, like a 15-year-old boy is not going to get his parents to buy him a massive Bowie knife that like wasn't going to fly. But anyway, these I do remember around and they disappeared. And this is like probably the first one I've seen for sale for years. So how much is that going to go for?
Yeah, you'd call your knife David. You walk out the shops and the police arrest you and you go, what are you doing? I'm just carrying my David. What are you talking about? My David Bowie. All right, let's move on. All right, so Carol's kicked off at 350. Ange's at 390. Jared's at 420. Joel's at 1280. Christie's at 420. William's at 450. Mark is at 750. There's a bit of consistency between the group here. Gavin's at 476. Grant's at 250. Rob's at 2,000. Rod's at 295. Luke is at 1,001. Jess is at 1130. Connie's at 520. Phil's at 175. Where are we? Thomas is at 1,300. Joshua's at 600. Moneybag Sullivan's at 250. Good old Cheesy's at 640. Mick has said 120. No one has said that this is cheap. So even Greg King hasn't chucked in $2 for this one. Mick's at 120. Violating this knife is at $1,000. George has got 150 on it. So there you go. So everybody thinks there's a bit of money in this. It has been used. As for what it's been used for, that's a very good question, eh? So and you are right, Jared. A lot of bids on this one as well. So there you go. In fact, the box alone, you think it'd be worth a fair whack of dollars because it looks pretty cool. All right, So the Indiana Jones Khyber David Bowie knife, it has been used and abused in one way, shape, or form, and went for a whopping $418.
Do you know who got that one?
Who?
No one, because no one here has an edged weapon license, so it's totally illegal.
Oh, good on you. I think Chrissy's got it at 420. She gets $2 back as well. Anyway, anything you want to say?
Pretty close. That was that was a close bid. No, that's an unusual item that I saw and instantly was taken back to my teenage years looking at them at Chadstone or Knox. So cool item.
Very cool. Actually, because hang on, sorry. Jared got it at 420 and Chrissy got it at 420. You guys are gonna have to fight to the death over your Bowie knife. So there you go. And if you feel some stabbing pains, then you know you've probably lost the bid. All right, so the lucky last one for tonight. Look at this. Oh, mate, it figures. What do you reckon?
Now, this is a really interesting item. I think this is fantastic. And again, I wish I was like one of those people who looked at everything on eBay every day and I would have tried to get this. This is a Indiana Jones figure. It has been opened, so it does come off the card, but it is the first Australian one I have seen for sale in years. And you can tell it's Australian because over the special mail away offer, it says not available in Australia, because all of those mail away offers we got ripped off and we didn't get locally. So you get the Australian Indiana Jones, so I guess it's like a Tall Toys variant. But not only that, he's got the backing card, also the Australian versions of the Marion and the Cairo Swordsman. They're in the pictures down the bottom, but it says at the top, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones figure, Kenner plus extras. That is a rare item.
Very, very, very cool. All right, so I was reading something else. So I'm not too sure where this actually starts. 100, just give me a second, everybody. All right, so Glenn has started off at 500. Gavin's at 20. It is mint on card, so be aware of that. Where are we? Joel has said 377. Jess is at 1100. Rod's at 1100. Luke's at 470. William's at 1500. Thomas is at 800. Jared is at 600. Violating, got all Indiana Jones on his card, is the Vial at 650. Ange was it 20,000? Ange, oh mate, that's the most you've ever put in, I think. Grant has said 1200. Mark is at 600. Connie's at 690. Phil's at 375. Carol's at 590. Good old Cheesiness once again is at 150. Christie's at 970. Rob is at 1300. Mick is at 250. Moneybag Sullivan is at 850. Joshua's at 150. Jimmy's at 1500. 1550. Very good, very good. Yes, because there wasn't a lot of toys released, and the fact that this is even available is very, very cool. The only thing that ruins it for me is the fact that the price sticker is still on it up here, which is a bit unfortunate. But there you go. All right, so what do we reckon it went for? Raiders of the Lost Ark Indiana Jones action figure for 1982 plus the extras. It's got to be worth a bit of money, and sure enough, $250. What do you reckon?
So Mick got that on the money with 250. This is one of those examples where someone probably did the research and thought they were selling a loose figure, but they got it totally wrong because it was the Australian variants and there was probably nothing to compare it to. So this was put up at a buy it now and would have sold within seconds at that price. I guess it's one of those things you lament where you can't look at everything and see everything all the time, but it is nice to know that there are still some bargains on eBay. Rod, yeah, that was when I lamented when I saw that. I said the same thing. What? Why didn't I see that? Then I looked at the when it was listed and when it sold, and it went almost as soon as it was put up on a buy it now. So the individual cards, like without the figures for the Australian versions, would go for more than that each, I would say. So it just does show you when we highlight these things, not everything goes for $20,000. You can still pick up a bargain. And like we were saying on our very first episode, some people collect backing cards and the backing cards can go for hundreds of dollars. So this is one of those things where it's local. So a lot of people who are watching know that these ones are very, very rare, but it still went for a really reasonable price.
Andrew said, why not $20,000? Yeah, I think, yes. Imagine that you say, I can buy myself a whole Astra or I can buy myself an action figure for 20 grand, bloody hell.
Well, that's a no-brainer. I'd spend it all on action figures.
You are such a predictable dude. Anyway, so it's now 9 o'clock. We've got our main topic of discussion tonight. And of course, I don't have to sort of introduce it because we should just sort of kick it off with a bit of this.
What should we talk about?
Exactly right. What are we going to talk about? We're going to be talking about good old Raiders of the Lost Ark. Is that right? What are we on about?
We are, and I don't know if you picked up when I put this picture together. I found online there's an advert for the Russell Street Cinemas there on the right-hand side here in Melbourne. So there wasn't a lot of newspaper cuttings for Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I found one for Russell Street, which is pretty cool. Now, I didn't see Raiders of the Lost Ark in the cinema when it originally came out. I was just a little bit too young, and I don't think my parents thought it was a good thing for me to see. Even though I'd seen, Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, this was a bit more adult. The first memory I have of this is one of our teachers put it on when I was in about grade 3 at primary school, and we got about 10 minutes into it when you see Forrestal skewered through the traps at the beginning of the movie, and half the kids freaked out and we had to put it out and we weren't allowed to watch it. Did you see this in the cinema when it originally came out, Dags?
Yeah, I did, but I don't really remember it that well. But I do think it's one of those movies that if somebody says they didn't like it, they clearly need their head read. I mean, it was like there was like nothing wrong with it at all. It was a really, really good film. And I think it surprised a lot of people too, because people are so used to seeing Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, as Han Solo, and then he appears in this, and it's like, especially that's like, it was a match made in heaven. So very, very groovy. So yeah,
I mentioned earlier that it was one of the first videos that we hired, and I remember my mum saying to me, "So you know what the Ark is?" And I confidently said, "Yes, I do," because I thought it was Noah's Ark, and I was really, really disappointed when they didn't go looking for Noah's Ark, and it was the Ark of the Covenant, which I had no idea what it was at all. And it's a very interesting thing that I've read online that the Ark of the Covenant is mentioned in the Bible a couple of times. And if it wasn't for Raiders of the Lost Ark, even people who, are Christian and read the Bible, it wouldn't really stand out as an object and something that would be in a movie. I mean, it's been in the Ten Commandments and a couple of other things in the background. But Raiders of the Lost Ark actually put that artifact on the map. So tonight we're going through some of the other artifacts from Raiders of the Lost Ark, but this is the merchandise, the posters, the print material, and all those goodies that people love to collect associated with one of my favorite movies of all time.
I think you're right. A lot of people did think it was Ark of the Covenant and Ark of the bloody hell. I'll get it right eventually. The Noah's Ark. And they go, "Oh, he's looking for Noah's Ark. How good is that?" And they're looking for a little shiny box instead, and go, "What the hell's that?" So, yeah, exactly right.
I was in that boat. So we're starting with looking at posters, and I've got all of the posters there for the different Indiana Jones movies. And this is purely because this episode was going to be about all 4 movies. But when I got like a couple of days into putting slides together, I realized it's going to be enough for each one. So tonight, we're just concentrating on Raiders of the Lost Ark. But for all those people who Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls is your favorite movie, we'll get there one day.
Even Chrissy said the Sunday school teachers use the film as a teaching prop, as you well should. So remember, everything you see in the movies is true. So keep that in mind, kids.
So the print material for Raiders of the Lost Ark is quite interesting. It's probably not as diverse as Star Wars was. With Star Wars, the development seemed to go over a couple of years. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think maybe because there wasn't as many problems in development and they had more of a clear vision of what the movie was going to be about, the print material is all on the same page, except when you get to Poland, of course, because we love the Polish posters. But here is the local and British posters. There's an advanced poster there in the UK which sort of had newspaper cuttings on the poster, which I find very interesting. I hadn't seen that poster before. But one of my favourite posters of all time is the one in the centre there, which was on one of the original soundtracks. I didn't see that poster locally growing up, but I think they used it for the 10th anniversary as well. When it was back in the cinemas, and that's when I picked that up. So that's my favourite poster from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The other ones are the classic ones of Indiana Jones. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this, and you don't think of this now, this was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and at the time, no one knew who Indiana Jones was. So none of the material is aimed at people knowing Indiana Jones, like the other movies where it's all Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, until we get to the reissues about a year later when they start putting Indiana Jones because he's become an icon in his own respect. But I think you would agree, the Indiana Jones posters are some of the most iconic images in poster history. And I can't imagine if you saw them, you knew it was going to be about adventure, but you would have no idea of the roller coaster you were about to go on when you saw that movie.
Totally agree. And Rod's confirmed, it was the 10th anniversary Struzen. And I just realized there actually is a 10 behind the Raiders in the middle there. So It was the right film at the right time for the right audience, and ultimately it could do no wrong. And the funny thing is, it's one of the rare films that sort of starts with no fanfare, no music. It just starts with the Paramount mountain and then just go straight into the thing. It's like, because you're so used to the march, the theme, you think it's going to be like Superman or Star Wars, the big opening theme. And that must be really interesting from Spielberg's point of view to say, no, take all that out, right?
And
just don't have any of it at all.
Jungle sound.
Start very subtly. And I think that alone is absolutely ingenious, which I thought was really, really cool. And you're right. Once you get introduced into, like, when he first appears, he's in shadow, right? And I think that's the magnificent. You get the silhouette, then he walks into the sunlight. Absolutely, yeah. It's just a cinematic masterpiece in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And here is the international posters. And I'm sure one day a segment we can get out of the show sometime is, what is this Polish poster advertising? Because when you see the international posters for stuff, generally they use some of the same images as the local or the American releases. Usually I love the Japanese ones where they take the standard artwork, and the Japanese print I just think looks fantastic on posters. But the Polish and the chess ones, I don't know, like, they're brilliant and they're terrible at the same time, because you cannot tell what the movie is. And often when you've seen the movie, they don't have much to do with it. The one down in the bottom left is the Polish one, and it looks like something more Lovecraftian or Cthulhu, with this skull with a whip going through it, or snakes or something like that. And the one above it is it's like it's like all the movie done in like poor comic book. So you've got the truck and the ark and the plane and all of this in really weird sort of childlike comic book pictures. So they're brilliant and terrible at the same time. But I'm sure one day we can do a flash the poster up, have everybody guess, and then when it's like revealed what it is, no one would have a clue with some of the art that they did.
Well, maybe in Poland, when someone designs this, someone else says, that's complete tripe. No one's going to understand that. But they go, no, don't worry about it. People will get it. That's the most important thing. And the funny thing I was about to say is I was about to take a drink. But, of course, before you take a drink, you've got to go, Pestore! Pestore! People are just typing up all these quotes here. You can't help yourself, can you?
That's how you can tell a movie is good. Like, when you see the Indiana Jones logo, you hear the music in your head. That means it's a good movie. And people in the comments, that's fantastic. If they just quote backwards and forwards because the movie's so recognizable, it's one of those things where you've seen the movie, you're in the club, you know it's good, and you know everyone knows what you're talking about.
See, the other thing about saying quotes is not just saying the lines, but getting the inflections right. So when it's like, it's a radio transmitter for talking to God. No, you don't say that. It's a radio transmitter for talking to God. I'm very impressed you could get the inflection from the typing. Oh, mate, you never try and out-nerd the nerd. What can I say, eh? So there you go.
There you go. And this is just an example of a lot of the Spielberg and George Lucas stuff. They would release something and then it set the tone for the rest of the decade. So you've got Raiders of the Lost Ark, and because of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you've got other films that were greenlit. There was Romancing the Stone, which you can kind of see is in the same tradition, and then Alan Quatermain, where they've almost ripped off the font as well. And I'm sure if these movies had been taken to studios before Raiders of the Lost Ark, the studios would have said, nobody wants to see this. But then after Raiders of the Lost Ark, the studios are going to directors and producers and writers going, give us our version of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So a good movie can stimulate the film community.
See, I don't agree with you. I think, because I only saw Romancing the Stone only about 3 weeks ago, and because it's set in, at the time, contemporary times, I think it would have done quite well if it had come out before Raiders. But you are right. Clearly, they're a bit of a knockoff. King Solomon's Mines is a good example of that. One of the things that I was thinking of is that every time you see the posters and you see the image of Harrison Ford, of course, Harrison Ford wasn't the first choice for Indiana Jones. Tom Selleck was going to be Indiana Jones, but he wasn't available because of Magnum PI. So imagine that. You need to digitally impose Selleck's face on all the posters and just see if it has the same feel. I reckon it would have been a completely different.
Some of the early, I think it's Sterenko pre-production art actually has Tom Selleck in the role, and it's quite interesting because it's obviously Tom Selleck, but he doesn't have his Magnum mustache. But it would have been interesting. Would it have been as good with Tom Selleck?
Yeah, we'll never know, and maybe that's a good thing. So there you go, and good on you, Rod. He's the one. He's just typing up all these quotes. You want to go talk to God? Let's go and see him together. I got nothing better to do, which is and then of course, what's the very next line? There comes the little kids come running in, and I can't remember what they say. They don't say Indy. They say something to the kid.
Come home, Indy, isn't it?
Come. Yeah. Anyway, move on.
And for any good movie, even today, you have the comic book adaptations. Raiders of the Lost Ark is interesting because it was a 3-comic set, and it really didn't go on till later. There was the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, but that was later, and it was released as the 3 individual issues. And it was released as a hardback annual with the same story in, and then it was released as a one-shot with a very similar cover to the annual. So there wasn't a lot of comics for Indiana Jones, which is surprising because the continuing adventures is kind of really fits a comic book format. You can do crazy stuff in there that you don't have to have the budget for a movie to do. So there weren't a lot of comics for Indiana Jones. I think I read the comics quite early. And I remember loving the first issue with the headpiece to the staff of Ra burnt into Tot's hand, which is a classic image.
That's actually such a clever part of the story because he's missing the other side, and it's like because the staff is too long, it's like, and they're digging in the wrong place. That is just ingenious. Love it. Yep, very, very cool.
And so, here's some of the art from the issues. The middle one there is a original page that hasn't been coloured. And the thing that grabs me with Indiana Jones, and I guess comic books did that because I've read a lot of comics and they are gorier than I remember, but Indiana Jones is quite an adult movie with quite a lot of horror and violence, and they didn't back away from it in the comic books. They did heads melting and exploding, torture, all the Wrath of God type stuff. It was all there. So it is a good and faithful adaptation of the movie.
Got a classic one. I mean, you can interpret this in 2 different ways. Good on you, George. Bad dates, right? You can say, yeah, I went out with this chick last week. Oh, yeah, it was a bad date. Oh, last year was a bad date. And I agree with you. There was actually a TV version released of the movie where at the end, and they had to re-edit it because they cut out the fact that the guy's head shrunk and Tot's head exploded and all the rest of it. So in the TV version, you go, well, what happened to the 3 guys? Because you just don't know. The lid goes up, the lid comes down, and it's done. Everybody else has died. So,
yeah.
Yes. Crazy stuff. Sticking on the theme of the paperwork.
And the last one, we're looking at the comics. It did retain some of the deleted scenes, and it's one of those things where people forget. When you saw a movie back in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have the video and you didn't have it on TV and you didn't have it on streaming. So a lot of the time you saw the movie once, and then if there was a record or a comic or a book, you might read that more. So that version becomes the version that is the most correct version in your head. And the comic book has the deleted scene, which shows how Indy got, when the submarine submerged, how he got to the island without drowning, and apparently he used his whip to lash himself to the periscope that was up for the entire voyage, and then just cruised along through the water with his head above the surface.
So that may have been inspired from the scene in 1941, which Spielberg also directed, the movie where the Japanese submarine sticks the periscope up and the lady's sitting on the top of it, and yeah, it's probably a very, very similar thing because, there's a lot of things you say in the movie. If the submarine submerges, Cottolini's in a bit of a pickle. And, of course, at the end, when all the dudes have died and it's just him and Marion, it's like, well, how do they get off the island? So, but anyway, let's not worry about those details, shall we?
Yes.
There was something I was going to say. Oh, yes, right. They were talking about, yes, I'll just move on. Yep, go for it.
I was just going to say about the comics, they're still quite reasonably cheap to get to, so pick them up if you want a good read. We're moving on to the records, and the records, John Williams was responsible for Star Wars, and he was responsible for Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the other big one, I guess, of course, is Superman. And I would say they are probably 3 of the most recognizable themes in the history of ever. The Star Wars theme, the Raiders theme, and the Superman theme, to the point where you end up, humming the theme when, like I said, you see the title or you see something on TV or something like this. the Raiders of the Lost Ark theme is so good. It has been in print and available ever since the movie was released, and it was out on record originally, of course, and then it came out on tape, and then it came out on CD, and it's back available on record again. So here are a couple of the original releases. So there was the gatefold release, which opens up, and there was the single release as well. There's the one on the right there, which has the 10th anniversary poster art on, and that was a bit different because it had dialogue and sound effects from the movie during the soundtrack.
So just to clarify, that last thing is actually like a story of the one on the extreme right-hand side. And unlike, say, the story of records for the Star Wars movies, there was no narrator. They just took the movie and cut it down into the thing, right? And what was significant, because a friend of mine had it, it was the first time you could hear the sound in stereo, because, you know, videotapes were just mono back then. No one had stereo systems at all. So if you played this record and put headphones on, you were hearing the movie in stereo, and the sound effects were awesome. So the punches, whoosh, whoosh, it was really, really full on, and it was worth it purely just for that. And, and the fact that there was no narrator, the sound effects and the music and that wasn't spoiled, which was really, really cool. So there you go.
Yeah, it's it is one of those things where it is one of those soundtracks that is timeless, and I'm sure when the new movie comes out, they'll be going straight back and using all the original themes.
We get to say goodnight to Luke, by the way. He's nicking off to bed, so there you go. So, very, very good.
Thanks, Luke. Good night.
Hang on. Just to say night, darling. Have a good sleep. You never say that to me. Jeez, what's the deal with that? Move on.
Don't dream of horror Woody coming and getting you. This is just
or Daffy Duck sitting facing the wrong way with the tongue. Yeah.
So this is one of those interesting little things I put up on just because it's not really related, but it is. But this is what a big impact that Raiders had on popular culture, where we had those Ripper and those different years compilations. There was a couple of years where there were Raiders of the Pop charts that were sort of riffing on the Indiana Jones logo and someone going and getting gold records and stuff. So it was big enough that it crossed over into other genres, and you could go and get your Wah Wah Knee on a compilation with a Indiana Jones on the front. So I didn't really collect those compilation records, but I got these ones because they were Raiders of the Lost Ark related, which is quite interesting. They weren't by big labels. They were more like Demtel and stuff like that, and KTEL, I think.
Sorry, it's funny, isn't it, how one word can have such a massive connotation in marketing, and everybody just jumped on the bandwagon with the same font and color scheme and everything. It's amazing. Talk about an absolute rip-off and a half. So there you go.
Yeah. And then we jump forward to, I guess, the more modern stuff, where on the right there, records and vinyl have come back in a big way. And the interesting thing is there's not a lot of just standard editions. Everything that comes out these days is the limited edition, colored vinyl, gatefold sleeve, limited to so many in one color, limited to so many in another color. Well, they've done that with Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's the gold with black blotches release. And I don't really know how that relates to the movie. It's a cool looking record, I guess. The Japanese pressing is in the middle there, which has the Japanese obi, and collectors used to treasure Japanese pressings because the vinyl was a better grade. So you'll often see Japanese pressings go for more. And then when they went to CDs, Japanese record producers were very smart because CDs aren't a better quality. So what the Japanese discs would do, they'd put 2 extra tracks on. So international collectors would still be tracking down the Japanese editions. Very smart the way they marketed stuff. And then on the left there, there's a couple of pieces of sheet music. Raiders was popular enough that you'd get school bands would often do Raiders and Star Wars because it was like a way to get kids interested in classical music, but something that they enjoyed rather than studying something that they were bored of. So there's Marion's theme, and the Raiders March was released with really nice color covers. I'm sure you can get the whole score, but those ones were released with sort of collectible covers on that people look for.
Yeah, exactly right. And Roz made a point about the novelisation being done in all these different colours. Sometimes they're in different colours because they're aiming for different markets. So you had the adults version, the young readers edition version, the child's version, the blah, blah, blah version, or one just to sell extra books. You never know.
Well, I didn't do the books in this, but I did look at the pictures, and they did them in all different foil pictures. So it's the same picture, but they'd have a red foil border, a blue foil border, a green foil border, and it's exactly the same. And because it was foil, it looked amazing, but you read it once, then it looked crap because it has all these really bad white lines through it. So I might put that up on the gallery on the Sci-Fi Zone page after, but this tonight's so long, I just couldn't put everything in.
There you go.
This is the read-along storybooks, you know, every time Indiana Jones cracks his whip, change the page kind of thing. So you had the tape as well, which that one I found a picture of has never been opened. But these were very cool, and I actually thought that was a really great cover for a children's storybook as well. And again, inside, it was one of those things where you're buying it for little kids, and it's full of people dying and death and headhunters and all this stuff from Indiana Jones, which is fantastic, but at the time was probably quite confronting to some kids. And then you can see you've got the limited edition, or the original vinyl, and I think the original CD, and then the 20th anniversary CD, and then the CD box set with all the movies in. So it has been one of those popular soundtracks that has never been out of print, and I would agree it is one of those timeless pieces of music that was probably an instant classic when it came out.
Totally agree. Here we go. Time for a quickie trivia quiz. Jock's snake, what was it called? So he's the first
Reggie,
one to respond.
my pet snake, Reggie.
I thought it was Richie.
I thought it was Reggie.
I thought it was Richie. No, it's my pet snake, because he's in the airplane. My pet. I was waiting for everybody else to respond. You just cut me off. Pet snake, Richie. So someone's going to put subtitles on to have a look at it. So now it's Reggie. Okay. I mean, Rod's a bit of a fan, so if he says Reggie, then I'm probably glad I didn't answer the question. I always
heard it as Reggie, but it's hard to hear dialogue because they're flying as well. So
yeah.
Let's call it
on the show. Someone needs to put in the what do you call it, DVD with the subtitles and see what they come up there. So it was also said, hang on, Richie Edgy. Yeah, good on you. So there you go. Oh, Darren is correct. So there you go. It's Reggie, is it? All right, very good. Good stuff. Good to see you're all paying attention.
Now, we looked at this on our movies based on video games episode, but Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first video game based on a film franchise for a home console. We talked about this at the time. It was one of the more successful video games in that even though the graphics are very basic, which was common for the 80s, it did get across the feel of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you used your whip, and there was things from different levels, and you came up against Tot, and then you got to the Ark of the Covenant, and you the lid came off the Ark, and spirits, which just looked like a spiral line, come out and things like that. And I remember being quite impressed as a kid with this game. Interestingly, there's two different covers for the game. One is the movie poster, and one is an original piece of artwork. And I think both of the posters, both of the boxes are pretty cool.
Guess what, Mr. Vile? You're missing two letters. So it's not just CPO. There's a bit two letters before that. So there you go. Very good. Good stuff.
And if the Atari 2600 was too advanced technology for you, there was a couple of board games that came out for this. And what we were talking about earlier, I think that's the Strenko production art. And you can see it is more of a Tom Selleck version of Indiana Jones for that game. And that game is the Raiders of the Lost Ark game, which I remember playing once and finding quite baffling and boring. And then the second one that came out, that first one is by Kenner. The second one came out and it was Indiana Jones from Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it was a good way of getting another game out with a different name, but still calling it Raiders of the Lost Ark. And that is obviously Harrison Ford. And that game was more a move around, collect artifacts kind of game that I did have as well. And I found that one more of a enjoyable game. So anyone who grew up through the 80s might have had one of those games. The yellow one on the left was harder to find in Australia. I only got that sort of later at a secondhand market. I do remember the blue one on the right being around more in the shops here. Did you have either of the games or ever play them, Dags?
No. I think I may have seen the one on the right, but I certainly didn't play either of them. And I think I did hear that the game itself wasn't that flash. With the one on the left, if it's based on Tom Selleck, what you need to do is replace the leather jacket with a Hawaiian shirt, and you get a good idea as to how well good old Tom would have looked. And no one's actually brought it up yet. I thought someone would have. The lettering on the plane is OBCPO. So I thought chuck that in for those who are stressing out, trying to figure it out. What the hell was the letter on the plane? So, yes, very, very cool.
And the Raiders of the Lost Ark cards. And I've got to say, I think this was the original way I was introduced to the movie. And this was in the playground where someone would pull out a grubby pile of cards from their pocket and go, look at this. And the cards again showed all these gory scenes. So there was like dead bodies speared through and all this crazy stuff happening. And I just remember falling in love with the movie before I'd even seen it because of the imagery and what I imagined it was going to be about in my head. There's a couple of different versions of the cards there. There's the Tops one, which are, of course, the American ones, which were 25 cents a packet. And then on the left, there's the Scanlan's Australian ones, which were also 25 cents a packet. So even though there were different countries and the same cards, they were the same price. Usually American stuff was a little bit more expensive locally. Of course, the Scanlan one are much more collectible because they obviously sell less sets in Australia than they do in America. But the American set is still quite easy to find, and you can still find sealed boxes of them on eBay because they must have just, produced warehouse loads. So it is still, if you want a set, it is still a set you can buy for a reasonable price on the secondary market, and it is a fantastic set of cards.
The Vile posted a message ages ago. I won't find it now. I won't be able to look it up. But he said he was the only one of his friends who was collecting the Raiders cards when they were first available out of all of his friends. Here's an interesting comment from Christy regarding the board games. Why is Tony Stark on the board game? Which one is Tony Stark? So, I don't know who your friends are, Christy, but I think you need to get some new friends. So, because clearly they don't know what the hell's going on. So, how about that? Eh? Mark said he had some cards from the cereal packets.
The cards from the cereal packets, I'm pretty sure from Temple of Doom. I had some of the Temple of Doom ones, and they were the only way in Australia you could get the Temple of Doom action figures, but we will look at that on a future episode.
On the right-hand side, does that look like... Oh, yeah, okay. Anyway, I don't think... Yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but you have to tell your friends, they had the wrong person altogether. So there you go. Move on.
But now we get to what I think a lot of people here are interested in, and that is the toys. Now, the story of Indiana Jones toys is quite interesting because Kenner produced them, but they weren't in the shops till a year after the movie had left the cinema. And Kenner had a big success with Star Wars, and Star Wars they had already been sold on, so they were in pre-production when the movie came out, so they got rushed to the toy stores and were the success everybody knows. Indiana Jones was not a success at the toy shops. Kenner didn't pick the license up until it had become a smash hit globally. So that meant for them to produce figures, it took about a year's lead in. And Indiana Jones came out in 1981, and the Toy Fair for 1982 was the preview for the figures. So they kind of missed the boat on the figures.
I'm not going to go bring the picture back up, but I like this one from Gavin regarding whether one of Chrissy's friends saying that was Tony Stark. Yeah, squint your eyes. Maybe you can squint your eyes and go, holy shit, it's Robbie Downey Jr. He was only a little kid when this movie was made. So there you go. Yes, it's very funny. You're right. Unlike Star Wars, where there was action figures and toys everywhere for Raiders, it was for Star Wars, for Raiders, it was a bit few and far between, wasn't it?
Yeah, so here's the advertising for Raiders was a bit more subdued as well. So I don't know if that had something to do why the figures didn't do as well, but they did put stuff in the trades that they had got the rights for Raiders and they were producing them, and it was from the people who produced Star Wars. Now came Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can see there's some pictures from the Toy Fair magazine, which is a trade magazine showing people that are coming out. And the first wave for the first year was basically just 4 figures. The first year had a couple of play sets as well, but the first things to hit were the figures, and it was Tot, the Cairo Swordsman, Indy, and Marion. Now, I don't know, I wasn't collecting Indiana Jones figures when they came out, but they were put here next to the Star Wars stuff. I don't remember them even hitting Myer or Target or any of the big stores. I only remember seeing them in Venture, which was usually where toys are sent to die because it failed. I never saw a Indiana Jones or a Marion. I just remember seeing hundreds and hundreds of Tot and Cairo Swordsmen Yep.
Oh, I was going to say, why would you do the swordsman? I mean, he has less screen time than Boba Fett did in The Empire Strikes Back, and then they made an action figure of him. I mean, you would have thought they would have done a Belloc or something, maybe because of the color scheme, and he actually has a sword, right? But of all the characters to pick, it's like, really? It's like,
I don't know. I don't know. And the thing that a lot of fans back then and now sort of lament is they never produced just a Nazi soldier. And that was sort of like a stormtrooper. You know, you could go and buy 4 or 5 of them, but you couldn't go and buy 4 or 5 Cairo swordsmen because it is a single figure. If anything, they could have done a generic one of the Cairo henchmen with the black turban and the white, because you could buy a couple of them, you know, but I think they kind of didn't think it out properly. And I think the other thing they might have done, and I couldn't find what the breakdown of cases were, I think they probably sent out the same amount of Indy and Marion as Cairo swordsman and Tot, which meant Indy and Marion disappeared really fast. And if you didn't get Indy and Marion, why would you buy the other 2? Which meant every time they restocked, the shelves were just clogging up with more of the generic figures. As far as I know, those 4 figures were released in Australia, and none of the other figures and none of the other accessories were released here. They might have been, but I've never found any in the wild, which usually I would, being a toy dealer.
It's funny because both Marion and Indy in the movie have 3 or 4 different costume changes, and they could have done an action figure for each, but it wasn't to be. So, yeah.
So basically, if you're collecting this line, that's it. That's the full line right there. The Well of Souls playset, the Arabian Stallion, 8 figures came out eventually. And then there's the if you look at the bottom right corner, there's the Belloc, but he was eventually only released as a mail away and didn't come out on the card. I've just put that there. It's a sales sample that, is probably the holy grail of the Indy line because there was only a few of them carded. And then you've got the map room, the streets of Cairo, and you've got the truck. Now, the Indy line is good. All the figures are good. You can tell who they are. The Well of Souls playset is one of the best playsets, I think, for kids' imagination that's ever been released. It isn't as big as some of the playsets for other lines like Star Wars or G.I. Joe, but it was really evocative of the movie and gave just the right amount of detail and accessories.
So, in your opinion, had they really gone to town and marketed this to the max, do you reckon it could have been just a smash hit of just merchandise in terms, just purely toys, right? What do you reckon?
I don't know, because I think it might have been with parents like my parents not wanting me to take it at the cinema. It might have been perceived as just a bit too adult for the age that the toys were being pitched at. It didn't do well. Even in America, it was kind of seen as a failed toy line. But as we look as what came out, we'll see how it kind of went.
Because I remember you always said, like, the rule of thumb usually is that the success of a product is based on the amount of merchandise that sells. And you're right, 1, the availability, there wasn't much of it. But 2, you said the sales just weren't there. And even today, it's not like people are going clambering over each other for this stuff. It's almost like a buck the trend completely to what you would normally expect, considering that it's the same actor in, say, in Star Wars and Raiders. It's a complete contrast. It's really bizarre. So
it is an interesting one. I would have thought it would have been a dead set winner. Maybe it was marketed wrong or it was just pitched wrong. But if we go to the next slide, I think you can see right from the start. So these are the first wave that was released. You had Indiana Jones, the Cairo Swordsman, Marion, and Tot. What we were looking at in the eBay auction earlier is there, where you've got the mail away for Belloc in the ceremonial robes, but in Australia he was not available. I think in Australia in probably the 90s, there was a shop called Vega Transports, and they got hundreds of the mail away. I don't know if they got them from America or they turned up locally. So that was in the 90s quite easily available at toy fairs and around in Australia for quite a long time. You can see there. Sorry.
Go on. You finish this. What are you going to say?
Oh, you can just see there on the bottom right-hand corner, the back of the card, and that's the 4-back card. So it has the original 4 figures and the 2 play sets that were available. And that's all we got here. As far as I know, there were no 8 backs released in Australia.
So Jared's mentioned about new stuff that's come out in recent years. That would make sense with the film sort of having a long legacy. And don't forget, it did turn 40 this year. So
Yes.
Rod's made a mention about Paul Last Crusade even lucked out even more so than Raiders. Didn't have any figures at all until just recently. And once again, if it doesn't come out at the time when the show's coming out, it's almost like, why do you bother? I love this one for the vial. Sorry, the vial. Is there a tot with a melted face? And then Gavin said, that's what cigarette lighters are for. So, yeah, there you go. You do that to your action figures in the backyard, and your mother's like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm doing a melted face. He's opened the ark. It's not ending well for him. Give me some tomato sauce. Love it. Very, very cool. Yes, good stuff.
And you can see Kenner did it on the cheap again, because I think Indiana Jones is one of the best from its era action figures ever produced. You can see it's Indiana Jones. It's more articulated than a Star Wars figure because he bends at the knees. He's got his holster action where he can crack the whip and also draw a gun. But then he was originally started his life as Butch Cassidy. So they basically took a figure that already existed and changed the hat on it a little bit. And I always thought the Indiana Jones looked pretty much like Harrison Ford, but that's just the imagination making that suggestion, because it was originally, taken from other figures. So you've got Butch Cassidy there next to Indiana Jones, and you can see they're very, very similar. And I did think it was interesting. I put the Sundance Kid, and the Sundance Kid used a Luke head, and they just put a mustache on him. So the Kenner toy people were being very frugal in what they could use to make their figures the cheapest they could. You can also see there Butch and Sundance had horses, and the horse is just exactly the same as what was already released before for the Butch Cassidy line. And I mean, it works really well. It does make a really good Indiana Jones, and the horse works from that scene in the movie. The horses have a galloping action, which is more than a lot of Star Wars figures, the creatures did. So they are a really good toy line, and it is a shame that they didn't do better than they actually did. But that's the genesis of some of the Indiana Jones toys right there.
There's a good comment from Joel, actually, regarding space is more fun when it comes to toys. And maybe there's an argument or a comment to be made about whether, because Raiders is earthbound and set in the 30s, is it as appealing to kids from a toy perspective as opposed to science fiction space stuff? So,
yeah, I think he's totally right there, because I do think maybe the kids hadn't seen the movie, or maybe if they had seen the movie, they're stuck in the structure of what was in the movie, where if you see Star Wars, anything can be happening in your imagination just off screen, where off screen in Star Wars is an alien planet and aliens and bars and different worlds. Off screen in Indiana Jones is just old Earth. It maybe might not be as, capture kids' imagination. So Joel is exactly right on that.
The irony being, of course, in the 1980s, the film was only set 50 years prior. So it wasn't that old, but it's still a different era that most people don't recognize. But anyway, we move on.
Yep, so here's the play sets, and this one, Kenner were good with this. They bucked the trend, because whenever you saw figures in play sets, what did it usually say on the box, Dags?
Collect them all, or does it come with the figures?
Usually it says figures not included, but two of the Indiana Jones sets actually came with the figures, which makes the play sets quite collectible, because for people who only want to collect the figures, they've got to get the play sets to get them. And they're pretty good figures. You had the Monkey Man with his monkey in the Streets of Cairo play set, and then you had the well of the map room with the city laid out on the floor, and it was very, very cool. It was kind of like the Transformer the stats that you could read by looking through the red cellophane. They used that same kind of illusion where they had the city laid out with different things printed on it. But when you looked through the headpiece to the Staff of Ra, which was a rose color, it would show you where the actual Well of the Souls was. So I think out of all the different toy lines through the 80s that were related to franchises, they really nailed it with what they did. Every single Indiana Jones playset is really good, imaginative, captures the scene from the movie. And then, as I said before, the Well of the Souls is an absolutely fantastic environment for the figures. And the Ark of the Covenant that comes with the Well of the Souls, unfortunately there's only a little tiny picture there, has to be one of the best accessories to come with any 3¾ inch line ever. It looks like the Ark of the Covenant from the movie. The details are amazing. It's got a gold chrome to it, so it looks rich and golden. And if you were playing as a kid, you would totally think that that was the Ark of the Covenant. And then it comes with the stone cover on the top of it and a whole bunch of snakes, which if you get a loose one are always missing. And it comes with the mummy that has the breakaway wall. And it comes with the grapple hook that they can come down from the well. And it's the same accessory as the Luke accessory pack for the AT-AT from Empire Strikes Back. So that's Kenner sort of recycling things again. And then the truck is amazing too. It is really like the truck from the movie. You can take the back canopy off and you can put the Ark in the back of the truck. And there's even a thing on the back of the truck where you can attach Indy's whip. And as the truck goes along, it retracts the whip in. So it looks like Indy is climbing towards the truck, which is a very cool play feature to put into a toy. So if you want to look for a small 80s toy line from a good movie to collect, I would say Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the best ones.
Yeah, if you can get your hands on it. But at least the good thing about short toy lines is there's not that much to get hold of as opposed to, say, your Star Wars and Star Treks and whatever. So,
Yes.
very, very cool. And I like this comment from the Vile. Hey, it's the monkey. Yes, very, very cool. And don't forget, kiddies, when you go to work today, this is for Moneybag Sullivan, who's probably working tonight. Make sure you go, this is what I do when I'm at Aaron's store and I'm having to stand up all these figures and shit. Oh, my goodness gracious me. All right, move on. Here we go.
Indy, over here. Indiana Jones, at your service, Toad. Ah!
Indiana Jones and other action figures new from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, each sold separately.
Watch him, Cairo, swordsman. Yeah, watch my swing. Nice. All downhill from here, swordsman. You'll be sorry, Jones. Trick you again, Toad.
Indiana Jones, Tote, and Cairo Swordsman action figures, each sold separately from Raiders of the Lost Ark collection, new from Kenner.
What a disappointing ad. Lots of violence in that commercial, that's for sure. So, yes.
I think we've shown some Star Wars ads, and even though they're all dated, I do think the Raiders doesn't have as much excitement. I mean, they didn't even put the Raiders music on for cheap. How's that for cheapness?
Well, they got the Cairo swordsman, and they go, well, what can you do with him? It was only in one shot. It's not like he's a major character to work with. But anyway, move on.
Poor old Marion wasn't even in the ad at all.
Yeah,
So it just shows you, I don't think that ad captured kids' imaginations as much as the Star Wars ones that were playing at the same time might have. I don't think it was advertised at all in Australia, but there you go.
And you're right, Joel. Yeah, well, that wasn't good enough to make it. I totally agree with you. Yeah, so they could have done. Considering they did so well with Star Wars, they really just dropped the ball on Raiders. And as we said earlier, it's be very interesting to sort of go back in history and say, well, would it have been as successful or not? Anyway, let's move on. Otherwise, we'll never get to the end of it. So where we go.
Yes. So here's the second wave of figures. You had Belloc, which has to be one of the, his accessory must be one of the hardest accessories to find if you lose it. It comes with a postage stamp size map. And if you lose that, as soon as you take it out of the packet, basically it's gone. So that one is very hard to get complete. You've got the German mechanic. Again, if I was a parent, I don't know if I'd be wanting to buy a figure who met the fate of walking into propeller and getting turned into jam. And he comes with a spanner. You know
why that character never sort of reappeared in any other movies? Because apparently the actor kept dropping all the props. Let's move on. You're supposed to be kept walking into props, but I didn't get it out right. But that's anyway. Bad taste. Move on.
We can edit it out. This isn't going out live. So you've got Sala there, which was a good figure, and it came with a flaming torch that you could put in the Well of the Souls playset. So at least the stuff was, one thing could fit into another thing. And then you've got sort of a generic looking Indiana Jones with a bazooka. But I think by the time these had been coming out, the line was already not popular. So these didn't sell. On the secondary market, they're still relatively easy to find. They do go for a bit because mint ones are getting expensive. But like all mass-produced stuff, there is a lot of them out there. But I think they're a good line. I do think if you were an adult collector, they probably have more appeal now as something you were nostalgic for from your childhood than they did to children at the time. And that would be the reason why they're still popular on the secondary market and a lot of people are after them.
So the mechanic looks screen perfect, I guess, because there's not much of him. He's got the bald head and the moustache, but you are right, he does look quite good. And the actor Pat Roach appeared in all the Indiana Jones movies. I don't know about Crystal Skull, but he was in Temple of Doom and Last Crusade.
Yes.
And of course, he was in Willow, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately. But yeah, it's very, very cool. Yeah, good on you, George. Yeah, get to the chopper. Yeah, boom, tish. The Belloc figure could not be more boring. Yeah, well, I suppose the character is a bit like that too when you sit and think about it. So, or you could just rename it as Belosh. There you go. But yes, you are right. You look at the Belloc figure and you go, well, why would you buy that? Only because you're a collector, not because you say, oh, I really want to play with it. So I guess the playability with a lot of the characters is very minimal.
And I'd probably argue if you were going to get a Belloc, the one in ceremonial robes, which they didn't release on the card, is more of an interesting figure because, you know, you can open your arc and get your cigarette lighter, as I was saying before, and burn his face off. Where that one, he just sits around in the desert and drinks a bit, you know.
So you get two friends, right? They got you and me, right? You got our Raiders figures. I got mine mint in packet, and you've got yours in the packet. And you're about to open it up, and you know, and I said to you, Aaron, I am uncomfortable with the thought of this Jewish ritual.
That's gonna get us flagged on YouTube. Thanks. So here we go. And the last thing, and this is one of those classic toys where it's almost there and there's one thing that glares out as horrible, is the 12-inch Indiana Jones action figure / doll. This is a fantastic figure. The Harrison Ford, they use the head from from Han Solo. What is interesting though, for some reason they changed the colors of the eyes. So Han Solo has brown eyes and Indiana Jones has blue eyes. Now, Dags, do you know what color Harrison Ford's eyes are?
It would have to be brown, I think, because he's got dark color hair. But
yeah,
otherwise, I'm really looking.
So I don't know why they changed the eyes. Maybe just so if you had both of them, you couldn't say, hang on a second, this is exactly the same. They changed it a little bit. Now, this figure is fantastic. Comes with the whip and comes with a leather jacket and comes with a pistol and everything. The one thing that lets it down is it has the crappiest fedora that you could ever imagine. I don't know what they were thinking. It's this felt thing that isn't even the right shape, isn't really well made. And the thing is, at the time, you know, there were G.I. Joe and Action Men, and they were making hats which would just go on perfectly. But for some reason, they did this felt thing that doesn't look like Indy's hat at all. And no matter how you try and pose it and move it to make it look cool, it just doesn't look cool. So it kind of looks like, you know, when he jumps into the river at the start and then he comes out of the water and his hat is all like, floppy. If it was specifically made for that scene, they might get away with it. But for some reason, no, it didn't really work.
They probably found trying to tool a hat in such a small scale was just so difficult. They just said, you know, cut the corners and who's going to care? But of course, it's such an integral part of the character.
It's his silhouette, isn't it? Now, here is some interesting stuff that's been going around for a while, but people might not have seen. There was a third wave of figures that were being planned, and they got as far as the proposals of the original designs for it. So one of them was going to be the Raven Bar, and it was going to have like a henchman, had a breakaway keg of wine that you could open, had a red hot poker and a fire, so a toy that had like torture in it. That's always a good thing. And then it had a breakaway table and some alcohol glasses and things like that. Oh, that would have been good. It would have been good if it had been in like the other sets where they might give you a base or a wall to put it in just to tie it all together. But that worked because you'd have Marion, Indiana Jones, and Top that you could put in it. The other one, which I think is very cool, is the scene from the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you even have a skeleton of Forrestal from when he pops out of the wall. I don't know if it would have been a spin around thing or something like that, but it came with a spider web with spiders. It came with the fertility idol. It came with maps and torches, and the two figures. I think the figures it came with were the Belloc in his jungle gear, and is it Sepia who betrays Indy? Throw me the whip, I'll throw you the. Throw me the idol, throw you the whip. I don't know if his name's used in the. Yes, am I right? Satipa.
Satipa. Okay. Yep. Very good.
Yeah. So
Good
that
stuff.
they were the ones that were planned, and they would have been a good range if they could have got them out. I think it would have probably not sold too well, but the people who appreciated the line would have absolutely loved them.
One of the things you needed for the Raven Bar was whiskey. Anyway.
And as we were talking about earlier, in 2008, a little movie called Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls came out, and we will look at that movie. For better or for worse, one of the good things it did, it brought Indiana Jones back into the public conscious, and it became very marketable again. And they released more Raiders of the Lost Ark figures for this for the 2008 Crystal Skulls movie than they did when Raiders of the Lost Ark originally came out. And I think this goes to where the toy buying dynamic has changed, where people who grew up with Raiders of the Lost Ark saw these figures and collected them as adults. And I remember going into Toys R Us again in Knox, and there was an entire wall that was Raiders of the Lost Ark with all these figures, and I instantly bought one of everything because it was what I wished I could have done as a kid and the toys I wished I could have had. And they were there and available. And they did an okay job. Some of the figures were dead on and some of them were not. Unfortunately, I think one of the things that let it down, I don't think they ever nailed Indy, in that they did some really amazing figures and with some really amazing scenes, but I just don't think the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones figure, they got a really great one that you could say that's the definitive Indiana Jones. So I still like the one from the 80s better. There's nothing wrong with it. They were obviously released for toys, for kids, but I even think things like the Ark of the Covenant was done better in the 80s. They did some play sets, and the play sets are all right, but I think the ones that they released in the 80s were better. It's still a great line. And if you go to the next picture, no, go back, sorry. I thought I put another slide. I put it in the afterwards, but up the top there was an unreleased line that was only available at Toy Fair. So the box at the top center, it had the 6 unreleased figures that you could get from Toy Fair. I did think I put bigger pictures of them, but in that, what we were asked about earlier, there was a tot with a removable head, and the head was the melted version. And that would have been one of the greatest toy figures ever. And unfortunately, the line was cancelled and it was only put out at Toy Fair as a 6-figure set.
There is statues. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, that's, yeah, no, but I was talking about the figures. We will get to them because they have released a few tots with the melting head.
Good stuff. Anyway, let's move on.
And we've looked at the hot toys before, but Indiana Jones is popular enough that he got a hot toy. Now, the thing that I don't know a lot of people know, when you get the rights to movie franchise, you can produce the toys, but sometimes there's additional rights and you have to pay for likeness rights from individual actors. And that's only if you are a really high-profile actor that has control of what you're merchandised. A lot of times you sign that away when you have a movie. Unfortunately, or fortunately, Harrison Ford has retained his likeness rights for him, not for Star Wars, but for Indiana Jones. So when someone gets the rights to do an Indiana Jones figure, they have to pay a substantial amount to Harrison Ford. It's the same with Jack Nicholson. That's why there's not many Joker figures and a few other actors, which means something like the hot toy probably only comes out once, because once the initial excitement of everyone buying it has it's sold out, they don't want to have to then, once the likeness rights have lapsed, go and pay him another $1 million to produce another line, which might not sell as well as the first one. So we're kind of lucky with Harrison Ford that we've got these figures because it's popular enough that they can afford to make them. But I was always a little bit disappointed with the Harrison Ford hot toy. I think it's really good, but it's not 100% there for me.
Yeah, I mean, license issues notwithstanding, if you don't show close-ups of the figure because people aren't going to know the backstory of licenses of images, and they're just going to say it doesn't look like him, so therefore they're not interested. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. They should have just got Rod to pose for him because Rod's cosplayed Harrison Ford and Raiders and Indy for 100 years. So.
The petition starts here for a Rod Indiana Jones hot toy.
Yeah, love it. There you go. Very cool.
And when Hot Toys are recognised as sort of the industry standard for the best action figures, Sideshow, which actually produces Hot Toys, also produce Sideshow toys, and they have done a series of Sideshow Indiana Jones figures, and these are pretty good. They're not as good as the Hot Toy. They're more affordable. They're about half the price, and they did release a lot of accessories. So there's the Sideshow 12-inch Indiana Jones, which comes with a decent amount of accessories and alternate hands and things like that. But they also produced a really amazing Ark of the Covenant. So if you want a 1/6 scale Ark of the Covenant, for your Indiana Jones Hot Toy, you can find the Sideshow version, and it works just as well, and it's a pretty good piece.
Yeah, very, very cool. Looks nice.
And as we were looking at earlier, they produced a good range of villains, and one of the desirable ones that everyone is after is, of course, they did a melting face tot. So you can get him with his normal face, and you can get him with his half his flesh melted out and the blood coming out his mouth. And the exclusive version of him, I think, was the only one that came with the melted head, because I have had the standard version that doesn't. And why would you want the standard version if there's an exclusive with a melted head? They also produced a Belloc, and the exclusive version of the Belloc comes with the fertility idol and the base that the idol's on. And they also released an Indiana Jones in the German uniform. And I think that one is a little bit too generic. I nearly put pictures up, but I didn't. But there are G.I. Joe figures that, are a quarter the price and have more accessories and look just as accurate as that did. So... but that's the Sideshow line. There's the 4 figures. Again, Marion's kind of gets shafted. There wasn't a Marion figure, which there aren't many female figures for the Indiana Jones lines from any of the movies.
See, the Vile said, a melting top was a good idea after all. So there you go. Han Solo to Indy, the hat is like Clark Kent to Superman glasses. Yeah, I suppose, although you might have had different types of glasses. But yeah, there's only one hat. They just go together. They're just... meant to be. And
we're getting through to the really high-end stuff. We saw the premium format of Mola Ram earlier, but this is the Indiana Jones one. And the Indiana Jones premium format is quite a good figure. It's a quarter-scale statue, so it's quite big. But even bigger and more impressive is Indy on the Arabian horse, which goes for, $2,000 plus now. It is quite a big, impressive piece, but... a lot of people like the big statues. The Indiana Jones, again, is good for a statue. I always think they never quite get Harrison Ford. And when we look later at the Crystal Skulls, his figures kind of look better then. And I think it's because they can capture more of his personality just because he's older and he's got more wear to his face. But still, if you can find one, they're quite hard to get. And it is a nice figure. And it often comes with... wear on the jacket, which have started to sort of go with age now.
Very cool.
And we're quickly going over to Lego. Again, when Crystal Skulls came out, it meant that Lego picked up the Indiana Jones license, and boy, did they produce some good stuff. The middle one there is actually a fan-built scene from the Cairo marketplace. But they released 5 Raiders of the Lost Ark sets. And if we go to the next picture, you'll see more details. So they had the Forbidden Temple with the giant boulder and the plane with Reggie the Snake. And they had the temple with, again, the Well of the Souls and the giant Anubis statues. They had the Streets of Cairo playset where Marion was abducted. They had the Flying Wing, which is a fantastic Lego vehicle. The only thing that's a bit disappointing is the wings are sort of one solid piece of Lego. So you think you're going to build this big plane, but the whole middle section is kind of one piece. And then they had the race for the treasure where Indy is on the horse chasing down the truck with the Ark of the Covenant in the back. So all of those are amazingly nice Lego sets if you are into Indiana Jones. And I've bookended both of those with the Lego Indiana Jones game, which is one of my favorite games. There's a lot of Lego games and all of them follow sort of the same format, but Indiana Jones was one that crossed over to Lego really, really well. And probably the last game I've ever sat down and completed the whole game 100% is the first Indiana Jones Lego game, because I just haven't had time. The Lego of Doom, the Temple of Doom stuff in the Lego we'll look at is pretty cool too. So we move on now quickly to something else that opened up that the Indiana Jones collectors were really thrilled about, was the Indiana Jones adventure in Disney, which was the Temple of the Forbidden Eye. And we can't look at all the Disney merchandise because this show we're just looking at the Raiders of the Lost Ark stuff, but it did produce a lot of Raiders merchandise. So you can see some of the gift sets there with all the different figures in aren't the Hasbro ones, they're different. And they were only available at Disneyland, which means dollars on eBay on the secondary market. You've been on that ride, Dags?
Yeah, a few years ago. It's absolutely fantastic. Really, really well done and really well thought out. So, yes, excellent work. And while I'm just gasbagging, Joel said, yeah, Indiana Jones, just all the dream that Han Solo was having while he was in Carbonite between Empire and Jedi. Yeah, very cute. Love it.
Yeah. So, yes, so the ride is quite good. And because they have the ride, they've, of course, got Adventure Outpost, which, again, I was talking about, is just chockers full of Indiana Jones merchandise. And you can see there's walls full of caps and T-shirts and sip cups and jackets and figures and play sets, and even has stuff like, I guess, aimed at more the archaeology side of thing, where you can buy rocks and fossils and high-end things like that. We can't go into everything there. So the previous slide, we looked at the figures that were available. They have exclusive pop vinyls there that can only be bought in the shop. They have stationery and books and things like that. So if you ever go to Disneyland, I'm sure everyone who's into Indiana Jones will come out with a swag of stuff from Adventure Outpost and a lot less cash.
Yeah, actually, when we were there, it's a beautiful shop, and Spankin actually bought a Mickey Mouse that was dressed as Indiana Jones as a statue. Oh, it looked grouse. It was really, really well done. And just quickly, good old Phil said that he had some friends who got into the Lego games, and one got into Indiana Jones. So that's all kind of cool. Yes.
But if you want to go to the ultimate Indiana Jones shop, and this is something that I think is quite ingenious, if you ever get to go to Jordan and visit the city of Petra, where Last Crusade was made, there are actually Bedouin natives of Jordan who have set up Indiana Jones shops to cash in on Indiana Jones. Now, they're all, of course, 100% unlicensed, but if you look at it, it's like the Indiana Jones gift shop. There is not a single Indiana Jones item there. They're all locally produced or maybe imported from China. Carpets and scarves and cats and things like that. But I tell you what, by seeing that those are there at that location, I 100% more want to go to that location just to check out the Indiana Jones snack shop.
Now, if people out there think, why do they open up a merchandise store on the island that occurs where they open up, take the lid off the Ark of the Covenant? You can't, because in actual real life, there's no island there. So it's in the middle of the Mediterranean. There's no island. So I had a friend of mine who lived in Greece, and he told me that. He said, there's no island there. I've just invented that. And just quickly, Thomas has asked, have you got a lot of Indiana stuff? If you can keep your answer brief, that'd be great.
I do. Indiana Jones, I had everything, but it hit the thing a lot of collectors hit where you can't keep everything. So I kept a couple of my favorite items and sold a lot of it. I have this Indiana Jones jacket, which my friend Rod gave me. I did anticipate someone might ask me what's the rarest Indiana Jones item I've got. Now, I've got it here. It's in a bag, and it doesn't come out of the bag very much because it will unspool everywhere.
This is Greg King's Cheaper Things happening live on air.
So this is my 70mm print of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I have one reel from the movie as a 70mm print, and I would say even getting a 35mm print is pretty hard. So I challenge anyone else to show me that they've got like a 70mm print.
So if you're a fan of the Big Bang Theory, in the episode where we're going to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark with Will Wheaton and all the rest of it, and Sheldon and all the dudes steal the canister that has the extra scenes, they ended up at Aaron's place. So there you go. Oh, here we go. Look at this. You're suddenly the coolest kid in town. That's what I said at the very start of the show. Oh, how about that, eh? So look at that. Oh, mate.
So that's my That's my Indiana Jones brag item. I don't think there's many people with that. And I have toyed about how would you sell it? Would you sell it as it's about a third of the movie, or would you cut it into individual frames and put every one of them on eBay for like $2 each and make thousands of dollars that way? I don't know. At the moment, probably something I'll never sell because you would never find another one. Yeah.
Get the $2 out of it. So it makes this next item look unbelievably boring in comparison down to the last picture.
So we're down to the last picture, and I thought we'd go back to where we started, which is the start of the movie, and it's the replicas of the fertility idol. And as we saw, Spankin got like ripped off buying one of these off of Etsy a few weeks ago. But they have done some fantastic replicas of this piece, which are taken from the studio, the original studio prop. And there were a few different ones, but that one is the one that is all gold chrome. I don't know what it's actually made out of. It probably is a resin that's been chromed, and then it comes on the display pedestal from the movie. And I would think if you were looking for a nice prop from the Indiana Jones movie, you couldn't do much better than that.
Because Rod's made this comment, you've been doing the quotes all along. Sorry, Rod, what you need to do, I don't know if Sarah's still watching, she's probably given up by now. You need to get her to tattoo "love you" on her eyelids. There you go. I reckon that'd be kind of cool. But yes, you've got to have a fertility idol. There's always room for one of those.
So we have a very stern-looking man there saying, "Coming soon, collecting Temple of Doom merchandise."
Yes, fun for the whole family. Just something I wanted to chuck in very, very quickly. For those who didn't know or were interested, that there was obviously going to be the Raiders of the Lost Empire banquet hosted by Star Walking this year to celebrate Empire and Raiders turning 40 years old. Obviously, it's been postponed to next year. So if you are interested in finding out more information, just go to the website, but there will be probably be March next year. And even though it's celebrating the 40th and one movie will be 42 and the other will be 41, the event should still be very, very cool. So Raiders of the Lost Empire, I did a gala dinner dance thing celebrating both of those movies. Fantastic achievements. So there you go. Very good. What do you reckon, dude? That was a long one, wasn't it?
Well, that's a lot of Indiana Jones merchandise, and I had to cut that right down to fit in because there was a lot. So we didn't do books and some of the magazines associated and things like that. Thanks for being around. It was a extra big episode tonight. I hope everyone enjoyed taking a walk down memory lane back to Indiana Jones.
Very good. And like your arc, leave the lid on. And so as a consequence of that, make sure all your collectibles remain mint in box.
Where I propose it shouldn't be in a museum. It should be ripped off the card.
See you later, guys.
See you. Have a good night. And here we go. We've got a little bonus. Didn't really fit in the collectibles, but we didn't want to leave it out of the show. So anyone who doesn't stay around misses this. When I was researching the show, I was looking at the picture from the Bible that they look at in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I was surprised that I thought it was production made. I wasn't sure. I did some research on it, but it is the only piece of art associated with the whole Indiana Jones franchise that was drawn by Ralph McQuarrie. So this is a Ralph McQuarrie piece, and he hand drew, first he did some concepts you can see on the top right there for what Spielberg and Lucas were looking for. And then when they got what they were looking for, he hand drew the printer's plate, and it actually went to a printer and was printed like an old manuscript would be printed. And then it was hand colored and was put in a 13th century German Bible. And it does have German text underneath it. But the German text is apparently gibberish, so it couldn't offend anyone who was reading it and might be religious and think it was mocking religion.
Well,
did you know that?
Ancient language, so it wouldn't have really mattered. So yes, very, very cool.
Did you know that?
We did lose, by the way. We did lose a few people. Actually, about 10 of them, but we've still got a few sticking around. So.
That's okay.
I know, as if the show wasn't long enough. Hey, so there you go. Very, very cool.
And then the last little one for the night. Everyone thinks the major religious artifact was the Ark of the Covenant, but one of the things that no one really talks about is Belloc's chest plate. Now, when they talk about how he's uncomfortable with the Jewish ritual, it really was a Jewish ritual, and all of the images and all of the things that were in it were really well researched. Now, the breastplate there was worn by the Melchizedek priest, who was in charge of looking after the ark. And what a lot of people don't know, this is actually a mystical piece itself. And much like the ark that wasn't really known in popular culture till Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's a mystical pair of stones in the Old Testament called the Urim and Thummim, and they're translation stones. And this was how apparently priests would be able to translate stuff, get the good word from God, whether it was a positive or negative when speaking to God. And they kind of worked like glasses. So you see the breastplate there, and it has different stones, and the stones are all transparent, and the priest would look through the glasses, and apparently it would translate the writing or text that they were looking at. So when they were talking about they're uncomfortable with the Jewish ritual, they really did research it and do it 100% correct.
I don't know what you're talking about. They're just infinity stones, dude. Jesus.
Well, the Urim and Thummim have been in popular culture for a while. There was a theory in Lost that the black and white stone that turned up in Lost was going to be that, but it didn't turn out to be. But it's turned up in comics and stuff. So anyway, you have the breastplate there, and the stones go in the breastplate. So Belloc and Hitler really had done their research and really were getting mystical artifacts from all around the world. So there's the toy there with an accurate representation of the breastplate, a replica of the plot of the prop down the bottom, and then on that religious student manual you can see the Melchizedek priest is wearing the breastplate in the Temple of Solomon. So it didn't really fit into our collectors show, but there's some extra trivia for all you guys that hang around for that extra 5 minutes.
There you go. And after nearly 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think we're definitely going to go this time. So with that in mind, kids, yes, we're going to leave you to it, and see you all next time. Okay.